This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Hello, good morning and welcome to Suzuka for the Japanese Grand Prix. This is the moment we've been waiting for. The heavens have opened, the rain has come down. The grid looks a little bit like a Sunday farmers market as all of the teams and drivers are sheltering and huddling together from the precipitation. But this weekend, it's take two for Max Verstappen and he stands on the verge of becoming a 2-time world champion. It's pretty simple. If he goes out there from pole position and wins the race with the fastest lap to boot, then he will be a 2-time world champion. Delighted to say, joining us this morning is Jack Nicholls, our Formula One commentator. And Jack, the weather is going to play a big part in this championship battle, which isn't really a battle, more of a submission.
Yeah, it's certainly going to play a big role in the race today. It's wet out there, the rain is coming down. It's not torrential by any means. We're not sitting here going, oh, when are we going to have the start of the race? The race is going to start in 15 minutes time, but it's going to be treacherous. It's just kind of like a good old English day. Just, it's wet, there's drizzle, but it's not a disaster. So I'm looking forward to this.
We are all looking forward to it. 53 laps on the counter. Sam Bird, Formula E driver for the Jaguar team and former F1 reserve and test driver for Mercedes. This is going to get funky.
It's going to be very interesting, Jenny, that's for sure. I mean, Max Verstappen starting in the perfect place. Out in front, he will be the only car with a clear view going into turn one, whether that's behind the safety car and doing a formation kind of start or doing a traditional start off the start line. We actually saw him try and attempt a normal procedure start out of the pit lane. He did the second gear start again and he got an awful lot of wheel spin, something that he got in Singapore. It didn't work out for him. Let's see what happens today.
Yeah, let's see. So Max Verstappen came to Formula One, Australia 2015 at the tender age of 17 years, 166 days. He's got 31 wins to his name. Can he win here? Can he be a champion? Laura Winter has been speaking to him. We'll hear from her a little bit later on, but it's all set up for Max to win.
Okay, this is now 2 times that I take it easy on the outlap and I could have easily been in front. I'm never ever doing it again.
And here we are at the end of race one. Max Verstappen leads Bahrain with no points.
Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, the reigning champion who was second in this race, has pulled off the road.
Okay, Max, stop the car, please.
Verstappen through the final corner. He wins the Spanish Grand Prix and for the first time this season moves to the top of the championship. 6 from 9 through the chicane, out across the line. Max Verstappen wins again. Max Verstappen extends his championship lead, winning the Canadian Grand Prix.
Very lovely, mate. Great race start again.
Leclerc crashing out of the lead, hands Max Verstappen the victory and hands him a huge championship advantage. It's Max Verstappen, the winner of the French Grand Prix.
Well done, Max, well closed off.
And he's going to do the Dutch double here, out of the final corner. Checkered flag falls, and it is race victory for Max Verstappen again. 5 on the trot for Max Verstappen as he wins on Ferrari's home turf. The checkered flag falls, Verstappen wins. He is within touching distance now of his second Formula One World Championship title.
So Max Verstappen, as we said, if he wins this with fastest lap, he will win his second world title at just round 18 this year. There's no Abu Dhabi battle. There's no fight for that last little point or two. This is Max's year, and Sam Bird, he has been in such form this season, and you put that together with the incredible Red Bull, there's literally been no stopping him.
He's been relentless, Jenny, and I think you asked me yesterday, is he going to be thinking about the title? I think he just wants to win races. The title is inevitable at this stage. He's going to be a 2-time world champion in the near future. It could be in a couple of hours, it could be in a couple of weeks, we don't know yet. But he just wants to win races. The more races he collects, the more championships he's going to win, and he's certainly collecting a lot of wins right now.
100,000 fans are packed into the Suzuka stands, and they give it its own unique feel, don't they, Jack?
It's a really special location. It's a really special venue, and it's wonderful to have Formula One back for the first time since 2019. It's a circuit that's been on the calendar since 1987, and it's one of those. It's sort of an Asian race that has existed for a long time. The Chinese Grand Prix came in 2004, but Japan has always been a bit of a heartland for Formula One. There's always been drivers, and Yuki Tsunoda today is going to experience his first Japanese Grand Prix, which is very exciting for him, very exciting for the fans out there, and it's an iconic circuit too, one of the best in the world. In fact, it's Sebastian Vettel's last Japanese Grand Prix, but his favourite racetrack in the world.
Yesterday he was ecstatic, he said, because he managed to get the car into 9th position. I'll run through the grid very quickly. It is Verstappen from Leclerc, then Sainz, Perez, Ocon, Hamilton, Alonso, Russell, Vettel, Norris making your top 10, then Ricciardo, Bottas, Tsunoda, Zhou, Schumacher, Albon, Magnussen, Stroll, Latifi. Gasly starts from the pit lane after taking a new rear wing assembly. So I teased it well. Laura Winter's been speaking to Max Verstappen ahead of the rain and ahead of the race.
And bringing in 2021 world champion on the brink of winning a second world title, Max Verstappen. Sum up the mindset for me today.
Same as always. I mean, just looking forward to the race. Of course, we have to wait and see what the weather will do. But nevertheless, I think, we have a good car, and just have to, figure out the conditions.
And talk to me about this crowd as well. Obviously, you're Dutch. You have your fair share of home tracks within this calendar. But here you've been accepted as a Honda driver, and you've got huge support out there.
Yeah, it's amazing to be back here. Last time was 2019, and in the meantime, a lot of things happen. And it's of course incredible to work with Honda and be back here in Japan and see all these fans. So hopefully we can give you guys all an exciting race.
He will definitely want to give an exciting race, and there are plenty of people out there in these wet conditions who will be hoping that they can benefit, that it favours them, and it will favour the brave out there.
Does Max Verstappen want this to be an exciting race? I'm not sure he does. I don't think he wants to drive off at the front and not send all the fans to sleep, doesn't he?
No. When I look at Max Verstappen's eyes after a race, that's not the Max Verstappen that he wants to go out. He wants battles. He wants it. He wants to be spectacular. He doesn't like mundane. He doesn't like to just go round in circles. He wants to be spectacular. And in this weather, he can certainly have the chance of doing that. Who else, Sam Bird, do you think can impress in this weather? Who do you think can benefit from the rain?
It's so hard to say. It's so hard to say.
Come on, this is why we employ you.
I know. I mean, I'm hoping that Charles Leclerc really gives Max a run for his money today. Looking further down the field, I'd love to see Yuki Tsunoda do well today at his home Grand Prix, his first home Grand Prix. That it would be an amazing day for him. Don't discount someone like Lance Stroll to have a good day. We know that he's pretty handy in the wet. He had a great race last time out in Singapore. He's actually been on the pole in the wet before, I believe at Monza, was it? About 4 years ago. We need big races from the likes of Mick Schumacher. Daniel Ricciardo could come into play today. So lots of things to look out for, and obviously Sebastian Vettel's last Japanese Grand Prix.
Yeah, water starting to pool on the circuit. There is no doubt the rain is coming down heavily. There are lots of people in the grandstands wrapped up in their little cagoules and waterproofs, sheltering from the rain that is coming down. And we have 5 minutes to go until the start of this formation lap. Jack, just run us through the permutations very briefly.
Well, if Max Verstappen wins with fastest lap, he wins the championship. If he wins and doesn't set the fastest lap, and Charles Leclerc isn't second, then he wins the championship. There are more further down the order. He's got to finish in the top 6 in order to win the championship at all. Broadly speaking, that's it. But obviously we'll keep you up to date as the race progresses and the positions change if they do change.
We certainly will do. Right, plenty more build-up to come ahead of the race. The Japanese Grand Prix gets underway in just 5 minutes' time. But ahead of that, let's catch up with the latest BBC News with Matthew Bone. Hello and welcome again to Japan. It's round 18 of the Formula One World Championship. We are just now 4 minutes away from the start of the formation lap. 260 miles west of Tokyo. This could be the scene for Max Verstappen's second title. Plenty of other sports still to come today as well, with 2 big football matches later on. 2 o'clock, it's West Ham versus Fulham, and then can Arsenal go top of the table? They take on Liverpool at 4:30. We've also got rugby taking place, T20 cricket as well, and NFL later tonight at 9 o'clock. But the rain is coming down in Japan. Drivers are starting to rumble and talk to their engineers about the intensity, about pooling of water on the track, especially at turn 2. Charles Leclerc has been told the start is going to be imperative, and it looks at the moment like it may well just be a normal standing start.
That's the best news. I really enjoy a standing wet start. I think it's fantastic that we get to see who's got the best control on the clutch in these Formula One cars. It's going to be really, really fun to watch. Sorry, there's 2 cars I forgot to mention earlier on that I think could put the cat amongst the pigeons, as it were. Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso sitting in 5th and 7th. They were extremely quick in the wet conditions on Friday.
Yeah, those are the Alpine drivers. Also worth looking out for the Mercedes drivers, Jack Nicholls. They have more downforce on their car. It's almost like they've gone towards this wet weather setup, and they were fast. George Russell topped the timesheets on Friday.
Yeah, they were quick in wet conditions on Friday, as you say. It was a 1-2, in fact, with Russell and Hamilton. So they've got a chance at making some progress, but it just depends how doable it is to overtake and what the visibility is like and what they can do. All of the drivers will be starting on the intermediate compound of tyre, which is basically a wet tyre, but not the extreme wets that you have to use if the race does start behind the safety car. So that shows us that it won't be a safety car start. And I think that, yeah, Mercedes, they've got their work cut out from 6th and 8th on the grid, but a podium's not impossible if we get a little bit of chaos today.
Yeah, also worth bearing in mind, we saw some bad starts last time out in Singapore, and Max Verstappen was one of those drivers who suffered from a bad start, and we're expecting one side of the grid to favour the other, aren't we, Sam Bird?
We are. We have an area on the right-hand side where the surface holds more water than the left-hand side, so expect there to be more wheel spin on one side than the other.
Oh, plenty of drama. It's all set up, as we said, for you. It's beautiful Suzuka circuit. Will it see another? We've seen some famous titles awarded here. Will it see another one this weekend? 53 laps ready to go. It's almost 6 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully you're up bright and early. Hashtag BBC F1 to get in touch with us. And it is time for the race to get underway. So let's cross over to Sam Bird and Jack Nicholls.
Engines firing up. The mechanics are leaving the grid, removing the tyre warmers from the cars, and now in the drizzle in Suzuka there are 20 cars on the grid waiting to begin the Japanese Grand Prix. It'll be Max Verstappen starting on pole position, looking to win his 2nd Formula One World Championship title. No one can really stop him in that, but there's plenty of drivers who would love to stop him winning this afternoon. It is 6 o'clock here on BBC Radio 5 Live. This is the Japanese Grand Prix. So the cars make their way around on the formation lap, and this is the grid. Max Verstappen starts on pole in the Red Bull. 2nd is Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. 3rd is the other Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. 4th is Sergio Perez. 5th is Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. 6th is Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes. Then it's Alonso, Russell, Vettel and Norris, the top 10. Daniel Ricciardo is 11th, ahead of Bottas, Tsunoda, Joe and Mick Schumacher. Albon is 16th, Kevin Magnussen is 17th, Lance Stroll and Nicholas Latifi are the 19 drivers that will start on the grid. Pierre Gasly will start from the pits. A lot of spray from the cars as they make their way around the circuit. They went to the grid for their sighting lap, maybe a couple of sighting laps as they came back through the pit lane, and now they are on the formation lap, and there is quite a lot of spray coming off the back of the cars, so visibility on the run down towards turn 1, Sam, could be a bit tricky.
Visibility not only on the run down into turn 1, but for the first few laps is going to be dreadful. Look at the amount of spray that the Red Bull is chucking up behind it as Max Verstappen enters Spoon Curve towards the end of his formation lap. Going to be very, very tricky to gain traction off the start line, Jack. We saw that actually Charles Leclerc might have been playing some mind games because he got a better start to do the formation start. You practice what you're going to do for the real start. Charles Leclerc got a better start. That'll be playing in Max Verstappen's mind for sure, and the bad start he did in Singapore.
Yeah, very true. He's coming now down towards the chicane at the end of the lap is Max Verstappen, with Charles Leclerc behind him as they then start to back the field up and go a lot slower. About 20 miles an hour at the moment Max Verstappen is going, as he tries to let the rest of the pack catch up, because they've all got quite spread out ultimately because of the spray. I imagine they all want to give themselves a bit of room to see what's going on around them. So Verstappen cruising very, very slowly up towards the pit lane, the grid start I should say. The Ferrari mechanics in the garage watching on the screens, and these are always nervy times for the teams as well, knowing that the run down to the first corner could cause a little bit of trouble. Nicholas Latifi is finally now making his way down towards the chicane as Verstappen lines up on pole position, Jenny.
Worth saying, these Inters, the tyres that they're currently starting on, after 2-3 laps, they start graining up. It's going to be a really testing afternoon for all of these teams.
Yeah. And earlier on today, Charles Leclerc was told that it would be this level of rain for the next 30 minutes and then it would get more intense. But we'll see how that transpires. 53 laps or 2 hours, whichever expires first. At the moment, we're expecting it to be the laps, but we'll see what unfolds as the race gets underway. The Grand Prix that Max Verstappen could win his second World Championship. If he wins the race with fastest lap, he wins no matter what anyone else does. And he's starting on pole position. The green flag is waved from the back of the field now, and here come the lights. Verstappen on pole, Leclerc second. The Japanese Grand Prix gets underway, and it's a pretty decent start from Verstappen, but Leclerc's coming at him, and Leclerc's got the lead. Charles Leclerc gets the better getaway, and the Ferrari driver has the inside into turn one, but Verstappen sends it round the outside. Leclerc holds it in on the inside, but Verstappen keeps the lead of the race. Brilliant stuff from Max Verstappen at turn one. He holds the lead. There's an Aston Martin in the gravel, which I think is Lance Stroll at the back, but Verstappen holds the lead of the Japanese Grand Prix. Leclerc is second, Sainz is still third. No, Perez, I think, has got ahead of Sainz. So Perez is up into third, Sainz is fourth, and then it is fifth for Esteban Ocon. Stroll has got going again, but no, it's Vettel in the gravel. It's Vettel in the gravel. So Vettel's got going again in his final Japanese Grand Prix. But that was remarkable from Verstappen to hold the lead, Sam Bird.
Absolutely brave stuff when the championship's on the line from both title contenders. Charles Leclerc got the better getaway, but Max Verstappen just kept his boot in round the outside and keeps the lead of the Japanese Grand Prix. Great start. Shame for Sebastian Vettel, though.
Fernando Alonso is getting ahead of George Russell at the hairpin, sends it to the inside, and Russell's got the cutback coming out, and there's a yellow flag out there. Who is that? And it's a Ferrari. It's a Ferrari, and it is Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz is off the road and in the wall with damage to the rear of the car. Carlos Sainz out of the Japanese Grand Prix from fourth position. I think everybody else has managed to avoid him. There's a yellow flag, and that'll probably be a safety car before too long, and the safety car is deployed. Safety car deployed. Verstappen leading, Leclerc second, Perez third, Ocon fourth, Hamilton fifth, Alonso sixth, Russell is in seventh place. It's eighth for Daniel Ricciardo. Over the ninth is Yuki Tsunoda. 10th is Mick Schumacher. 11th Stroll, Magnussen 12th, Norris 13th, Bottas 14th, Latifi 15th, and then it is Gasly, Vettel, Joe, the last of our runners, because Alex Albon is also out of the Grand Prix. I wonder if because he's gone off just a few meters further on from Carlos Sainz, and Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri has a huge bit of advertising hoarding stuck to the front of the car. Early drama.
Well, you have to question whether it's too wet in these conditions for this. It feels like a lot of incidents happening on that first lap, which a little bit sketchy. I mean, the drivers, if you don't have clear vision, you've got nothing.
It's not that it's too wet, Jenny. It's just the amount of spray that Formula One cars kick up these days is enormous. It's very drivable conditions, but as soon as you can't see where you're going, that's when it becomes super tricky, as we see a replay now of Max Verstappen just hanging it around the outside of turn one and into turn two. That was really great driving from the front two.
Vettel was right on the outside of the circuit coming down into the first corner. He got a good getaway, went to the outside of Alonso ahead of him, but then you'll hear all the wheel spin because he was right on the outside of the track. And then on the break into turn one, I think he lost it, started to come across and then hit Alonso on one side and then got sent out to the other side.
I got hit by Alonso. Really bad.
Vettel says he got hit by Alonso.
I think you turned into Alonso, Seb, I think. But I'm interested to see the Carlos Sainz incident as we go on board with Carlos Sainz. Now, let's see what's happened to him. Oh, he's just lost it on a standing puddle. Oh, shame.
Yeah, I crashed.
Sainz saying he crashed because he did. And what happened? Joe spun further back in the pack. So Joe spun and then got going again down at the hairpin. What happened to Alex Albon? That's the other mystery, because he's pulled off at the side of the circuit and is out of the Grand Prix. In fact, Joe had just made a move. Joe had just gone up the inside, and then just as he was trying to get on the power, did a nice little 180-degree spin. Safety car still deployed. We're about to find out what happened to Albon. Up the inside went Joe. Joe then spun around. Albon gets on the... Albon's got a technical problem. Can't accelerate out of second gear. So that's why Albon's out of the Grand Prix, and he got off the road as quickly as he could. So the only final mystery is why Pierre Gasly has all the advertising awning over the front of the car, but we won't get that, and it's a red flag. Red flag is out. So the race has come to a halt on lap 2 of 53.
So Lewis Hamilton on the radio just said it's very slippery and dangerous out here, guys. It feels like it's extreme tyres. And Max Verstappen saying it's on the edge for Inters. Just as you say, it's not the intensity of race. So it's just there's so much standing water and there's almost no wind today. So it just sits there like a big puddle.
Yeah, and the air temperature is only 17 degrees. There's no sun out either, so it's not... obviously, because it's cloudy, because it's raining. But red flag is out then, and whether that's to... Presumably, that's just to clear the track up in the safest conditions with Carlos Sainz, but we'll see how long this red flag lasts for.
So, I believe Honda have the majority sharehold of the Suzuka circuit, or they own the Suzuka circuit, and they've always wanted the Grand Prix to happen at this period of the year, sort of October time for the Japanese Grand Prix. Personally, I can't understand why you would want to have the Japanese Grand Prix in October when it's kind of monsoon, typhoon season. Like the most wet part of their year is now. I don't understand why they wouldn't have it in sort of April or May when the weather is better. It would be, for me, a safer, better spectacle for everybody involved, because we keep on having this situation when we go to Suzuka that the weather can be very tricky.
Carlos Sainz is out of the car. We saw him just walking up the bank towards a marshal post so he can come back. Alex Albon is out of his car and just standing there. There's a doctor with him for some reason. I think it's just the medical car was maybe first to attend. So, but a lot of water cascading down the track now as the red flag's brought out. All the cars that are out there and able to have come back to the pit lane. So that's 18 cars, and quite a lot of people sort of joking about the front wing specification on Pierre Gasly's AlphaTauri, saying that will not meet... I mean, it was a huge piece of hoarding. I don't honestly know how he collected that and had it hanging on the car for such a long... like a snow shovel, like plough thing. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it kind of looked like his bonnet had come up. It was that sort of vibe to the
No
to
bonnet
the car.
on an F1 car.
No, exactly. Lap 3 of 53 then, with the red flag out here. And... Charles Leclerc is just sitting on his car. Sergio Perez is waiting in the pit lane. Perez has got up into third place at the start because of that spin for Carlos Sainz. Worth pointing out, Sainz the only driver that had an incident on that opening lap. Well, Joe did a little loop, but apart from that...
And Vettel.
Oh, yeah, but Vettel was contact at turn 1. That's not conditions.
Fine.
I'm just saying conditions-wise. Verstappen leading the Grand Prix at the moment, but we're in the red flag conditions here on 5 Live.
So the reason I think Carlos had the issue exiting the hairpin is because he already had wheel spin and the rear was already overslipping, basically. So when he hit that standing puddle, it made it even worse. He already wasn't in a completely straight line, and it sent him straight into the barrier. Big shame for him.
Yeah, we're just getting a look again at Max Verstappen's start. That's the sound you can hear, and he really squeezed Leclerc in towards turn 1 and then was just held it on around the outside. And Leclerc, we're about to see it from his point of view, because it doesn't sound great when he started, but he got the getaway. But then they were pretty even speeds coming into the first corner, and Leclerc was just pretty cautious going into turn 1 compared to Verstappen, who just sent it round the outside. And then as soon as Leclerc was in behind Verstappen, he had to back off immediately. This is the sound of Carlos Sainz's spin. Didn't even really hear the much wheel spin, to be honest. It wasn't like it just went boom, and then he was in the wall. It was almost like he came off throttle, and that's what did it, or something. It was a very not odd one. It was perfectly understandable, but yeah, I was expecting to hear more of a wheel spin moment.
I mean, I don't really see that as a driver mistake, to be honest, as we now see maybe what's happened to Pierre Gasly.
So he gets a lot of wheel spin, and he is backing off for a yellow flag. Oh, and then suddenly he's got some advertising hoarding on the front of the car, so it must have sort of bounced off when... Here's Gasly's radio.
Oh, I took a thing. What the hell is that? Oh my God. Safety car. I don't know, I got something stuck. I can't see in front of me.
So Gasly, it just kind of popped in out of nowhere, and he's furious in the garage.
Why
Gasly
is he so angry with the team? He spent the whole weekend, by the way, Netflix are following him, he spent the whole weekend just angry. This is a man who, this weekend, it's been announced he is leaving AlphaTauri to join the Alpine team. Nick de Vries will leave his Mercedes test and development role and go over to that seat at AlphaTauri. So another couple of pieces of the jigsaw are completed. But he's just been so angry. And conversely to that, I was just listening to some radio, actually. Lance Stroll had an incredible start. He's up 7 places in the rain, and he was on the radio to his engineer, just saying, yeah, it's wet, it's on the edge for Inters, and I can't see. And it was quite a light-hearted and happy Lance Stroll, understandably, for making up so many places, and he's currently 11th in the pit lane now.
Yeah, who called it before the start of the race, Stroll?
Oh, well, you know, I think one of the reasons why PM might have been angry is obviously they've pitted him. Now, under red flag conditions, that they could have taken that boarding off the front of the car, checked that the front wing was okay, and then potentially looked at changing to extreme wets. When they pitted him, they changed to extreme wets and they changed the front wing. So I think he thinks he's lost track position due to the pit stop.
Yeah, but he would have been he wouldn't have been driving very fast with that advertising hoarding attached to him.
But he went to red flag.
Yeah.
So he's thinking, in hindsight, we shouldn't have pitted.
Yeah, potentially. So red flag conditions at the moment. Rain coming down in Suzuka, and this is always, now you end up in that frustrating middle ground of the best way to make a F1 track drivable is F1 cars going round on it. But when the red flag is out, it just sort of gets wetter and wetter. And Ricciardo just having a little chat with Lando Norris, and
he's another one that had a great start, Jack.
Yeah,
really good. I mean, Lando Norris has gone backwards, but Daniel Ricciardo is now up to 8th place, so he's had a great start.
But his chat with Norris was quite a wide-eyed. That was not good out there. He certainly said the word worse, and I don't know what that was in response to, but I think he certainly gave the impression to me with his eyes that it was a bit sketchy out there.
It certainly looked a bit sketchy, and that's what I mean by saying you had to question whether it was safe for drivers to keep on driving. And all the fans are huddled together. They've got all sorts of matting over them to try and keep dry. One of them's got a huge Daniel Ricciardo face that's wrapped up in plastic as well, and he's just holding it up. The other, I suppose, news that it's not really new news, because we always knew that it was unlikely Daniel Ricciardo would find a place on the grid next season, but he in his media briefing yesterday confirmed that it was unlikely that he would be on the grid next year and be in Formula One next year. And that's I think if you'd thought about that a couple of years ago, you'd be bewildered by the fact that Ricciardo doesn't have a seat next year. Sam, what do you make of that situation?
It's tough for Daniel. It's no secret that I think he has struggled this year to get on top of the McLaren car, and in the seat merry-go-round of Formula One, he finds himself without a drive. And it's a shame for him. As we see a great start from Lance Stroll.
Oh, that was full commitment. That's unbelievable from Stroll. He just went to the inside, up against the pit wall, and kept it pinned.
That's a full send.
Yeah.
Full send, but fair play. That is very committed. And, somebody called it. Somebody knows what they're talking about in the commentary box.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right, Jenny, in that if at the start of last season, if you just said, end of next year, Ricciardo no one will want to hire him, it'd be very bizarre. We're getting a look at Fernando Alonso's replay. Coming down into turn one, he's sort of in the middle of the road, turns into I was looking to see where the contact with Vettel is, didn't even see it.
You saw Sebastian try to turn in, but Fernando Alonso was there. You just saw it on the left-hand side of the side pod.
So Alonso didn't get a great getaway, but he's still in 6th place now, behind Hamilton, but ahead of Russell, because he rather audaciously went to the inside of Russell at the hairpin, got a really good run up through the S's, and was taking a much wider line than those around him. Fernando Alonso.
Well, you just try and do any line you can to get some visibility, so you don't want to follow directly in the rooster tail of the car in front, because you just won't be able to see anything. Notice how he'll probably take a different line through the hairpin when he does, because he overtakes him. Very nice.
Yeah, so Alonso getting to the inside of George Russell and moving up into 6th place, but then Russell got back at him. So Russell did get back past him, actually, coming out of the hairpin, but then Alonso is ahead of him on the timing, so not quite sure what happened. Oh, that's because it was Hamilton, sorry. So it was Hamilton that Alonso made the move on, and then Hamilton got the cutback, and then the red flag was out for Carlos Sainz's car, and Hamilton was so close to clipping Sainz. That was the worrying, because Sainz has gone off at a part of the circuit that you'd never go off on in the dry. It's absolutely flat out and easy in dry conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. And notice how when we watched the replay of Lewis Hamilton there, you had no idea that Carlos Sainz had gone off. So visibility is really, really shocking out there.
FIA confirming that the red flag was due to worsening weather conditions and recovery operations required on track. So a restart time will be confirmed by race control. Just looking at the weather, I mean, it's pretty much set in now. 100% rain going on. And sunset will be at 17:27. So it's not like Singapore where we can just hold on and hold on. There will become a time where the race is compromised, but the race clock has actually stopped. They will have 3 hours, won't they? From the 3 hours, 2 hours is always.
Well, the race clock has stopped, i.e., we've got 1 hour and 55 minutes left of the race. Yeah, depending on whether we get to that first or the amount of laps first, and we'll wait and see what happens there. But then there's the 3 hour window in which that exists. So, but again, that takes you to 5 p.m. and it'll be dark by then anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
Like you say, there's not a huge amount of wiggle room out there. Kevin Magnussen just standing in the garage, looking back at all of the onboards from the start of that race, or more specifically, his onboard. Magnussen 12th on the grid. A few sensible fans have taken refuge in the Ferris wheel that overlooks the part of the circuit. Just sit on that and keep going round, I'd say. That's the good plan.
Just keep going round. You see up high, you see down low.
You can't hog a Ferris wheel, Cameron, and just refuse to move out of it.
Why not?
I see what sort of person you are, Sunbird. This is enlightening.
Yeah, well, it takes me back to when I was a kid. We went to Universal Studios and we went on the Jaws ride, the new Jaws ride, and And it was incredible, but it kept on breaking, so we kept on having to go round. We had like 4 free goes on this.
Really?
And yeah, it was great. So I'd do the same on the Ferris wheel, just keep going round.
For me, if a roller coaster keeps breaking, I'm getting off it. I'm not like, oh yeah, let's go again on this broken roller coaster.
When I say breaking, no, the shark kept on not appearing. Which is kind of a big deal.
So it'd just be going
yeah.
And then you'd all be, where's the shark?
Yeah.
And then there wouldn't be one.
Exactly. So when you're on the Jaws ride, the experience is to see the shark, not to not see the shark.
Here's some old team radio. This is from Stappen.
Red flag, Max. Red flag.
Okay.
Okay, so drive directly to the pits. Do not stop in the box. Stay in the fast lane and park in the order you arrive. Leave a 5-metre gap.
Ricardo's radio.
You're going to line up in the fast lane?
Yeah. Understood. That's the right call.
Hamilton's radio.
Cancel that right-hand magic, and we are coming into pit lane. Stay in the fast lane and follow it down to the end. We'll see you there. Okay, yes, heavy rain now.
Do you think this is going to let off at any stage?
The forecast is looking pretty grim, to be fair, but yeah, let's just see.
So that was some team radio from earlier on during or pretty much when the red flag came out. Ricardo saying it was the right call to red flag the race, and the rain pretty much only started about half an hour really before the start of the Grand Prix, maybe an hour, something like that. It's not been sort of set in all day, but it does look like it's kind of set in now. Esteban Ocon having a chat with his engineer in the garage. I always find Ferris wheels, I get bored after 5 minutes or so. Once you're on the way up, you see the view, I'm done. No? Do you love a Ferris wheel, Jen?
I don't like anything from a theme park.
Ferris wheel's not a theme park.
It depends how fast it goes. Like, you can get them that go quite fast, can't you? I mean, I don't mind like a London Eye.
Okay.
I quite enjoy.
You'd be no good on the Tower of Terror.
No.
Oh.
I mean, absolutely not. It's coming up for Halloween. I don't like to go to those rides. Scary things are not for me.
Okay.
I get enough drama in my job.
Yeah.
Dodging cars in pit lanes.
So this is the Japanese Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live, and Max Verstappen held the lead of the race as he went down into the first corner. Charles Leclerc tried to pass him, wasn't able to do so, and then the other Ferrari of Carlos Sainz crashed out on the first lap. That brought out the red flag. It brought out the safety car initially, and then that turned into a red flag. So everybody is parked in the pit lane, basically waiting for news from race control. The order is Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Ocon and Hamilton, the top 5. Alonso, Russell, Ricciardo, Tsunoda and Schumacher are the top 10. And then Stroll, Magnussen, Norris, Bottas, Latifi, the top 15. Vettel, Joe and Gasly, the 18 drivers still running. Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon have both retired from the Grand Prix. Sainz with a crash, Albon with a technical problem.
So right now you can see all the drivers have their headsets on. They're speaking with their engineers. They'll be speaking about their initial impressions of the circuit, what they encountered out there. They can't make any setup changes to the car, but what they can do is basically manipulate the software within the car to try and help them in the later stages of the race, because as we can see, it's extremely wet out there. They'll need to work on getting good traction. They'll need to work on stability of the race car and making sure that they basically stay on the circuit.
Lap 3 of 53 is the lap count at the moment. The race clock has stopped, and hopefully we'll get news from the FIA at some point on what the sort of plan is at the moment, because it's very, very rainy out there. FIA have said that this is for conditions and for the recovery of Carlos Sainz's car, and I presume Carlos Sainz's car will have been recovered by now. We'll be with you till 8 o'clock this morning here on 5 Live, covering the Formula One. Then we'll be heading to Sunday breakfast, and then a big afternoon of football here on 5 Live Sport. There's commentary of West Ham versus Fulham, and then 4:30 Arsenal versus Liverpool, which could see Arsenal go back to the top of the league. Max Verstappen then the current leader of the Japanese Grand Prix. Now, it's worth pointing out, if this race wasn't to restart, he wouldn't win the championship, I don't believe, because he wouldn't have scored enough points, depending on how many points they award, but it wouldn't be enough for 75% race distance, so it wouldn't be the full points. But we'll have a look into that.
Oh, producer Joe's just played an absolute blinder.
What's he said?
Because there'll be less points available for the rest of the season, so you've got to work it out on the new points adjusted, because at the moment there would be 112 points left to get from 138 points at the moment. But if we don't have 138 points on the table, does that change things? My brain it's really early. I mean, it's 6:27 in the morning.
That wouldn't change anything, because the amount of points still available is still available. Safety car's out on circuit, having a little drive around, looking at the conditions. And we'll see what the conditions look like. As we say, the weather conditions are not great in Japan. Basically, if they scored half points here, then Verstappen would only be outscoring Leclerc. He would be getting 12.5 points, and Leclerc would be getting 9 points. So I don't think that would be enough to give Verstappen the championship if it finished like this, i.e. if it doesn't get going again. So red flag conditions. Pierre Gasly in the pits, chatting to his engineers, for once in a fairly polite and calm manner by the looks of things, after a busy weekend. And he would have had quite the shock when he caught up that advertising hoarding that had bounced back off Carlos Sainz's car as he came past the stricken Ferrari on the left-hand side. I think, yeah, when just in front of Hamilton, someone ran completely over the hoarding, but then it ended up on the front of Gasly's machine. And what do you think about Gasly moving to the Alpine team for next year, Sam? Ocon and Gasly, the two French drivers, and they're going to be at Alpine together. Is that a strong lineup?
I think it's a pretty strong lineup. French team, two French drivers. It has the potential to have some internal fireworks, because I think both will want to be considered as the number one driver. And I think they're quite similar in terms of pace. What Alpine are missing though now is that they've lost. They haven't got rid of. They've lost their leader in Fernando Alonso. He's a real number one driver, and Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, I think one of them will have to step up and take that place.
You might have heard in the background Pierre Gasly being angry again, and apologies if you heard any swear words bleeding through from that audio, but I've been sent and I'm seeing various footage of Gasly out on track, and I think the reason he was so angry is that there was a tractor-like vehicle on the track that he was still driving around. So I've asked the FIA to clarify what's going on, but the reason he was so angry wasn't to do with strategy or pit stops or anything like that. It's because he went past a vehicle on track.
Maybe that's why he was marching up the pit lane to go and speak to somebody to say what's going on. Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
No, absolutely not. So that would explain why he was quite so irate at times, Pierre Gasly. And we are still under red flag conditions in Suzuka at the Japanese Grand Prix, the 18th round of the Formula One World Championship. And yeah, if it does end like this, Verstappen would have 353.5 points. Leclerc would have 256, which is a lead of 107.5 points with 112 still available. So he would not be the champion if it did end like this. And we're always now into that kind of teasing part of any red flag where the safety car goes out and you think, looks quite wet, but not absolutely undrivable, no chance we're ever racing ever again. And then you just brick in that waiting process of...
It's one thing, a Mercedes AMG car going around and it not looking that bad, and you think, the spray isn't bad. What are we waiting for? An F1 car, you have 20 times the amount of spray in an F1 car, and then you've got 20 of them all going at 150, 160 mile an hour close to each other on intermediate tyres. It can borderline on the side of not being safe.
So red flag still out in the Japanese Grand Prix. There's a bit of work going on at the back of Charles Leclerc's Ferrari in the sort of right rear of the car. Can't quite work out what they're doing, but the wheel is off and the hub is off. So maybe they are doing something with the brakes potentially.
Yeah, it could be doing brake blanking and just putting tape on it. They certainly had that big thick silver tape that they used to blank them out, and it's one of the things that the parameters that you can change clearly without any penalties or problems, and the heavier the rain, the different blanking that you presumably want, Sam.
Absolutely. The more rain and the colder it is, the more blanking you want. You want to keep that the brake temperature in the brakes. But then there's a fine line as well. You don't want them to overheat because that can damage the brakes, and then you can basically boil them and then they don't work. And you kind of need them to work in this conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex has sent in a Ferris wheel story. So is at Le Mans. And his dad and brother were spectating one particularly hot year, and his dad collapsed with heat stroke. His brother found a tap, but there was a hose pipe connected to it, so he pulled off the hose pipe and started flinging water at his dad. And then a guy started yelling at them in French, and they realised that the hose was cooling the generator that powered the Ferris wheel, which then broke down with everybody stuck on it. That's an awkward thing to realise.
Yeah, but I hope his dad was okay afterwards.
Yeah, I presume he was.
But Mailander in the safety car, I mean, he's got to have led more laps than most drivers in the F1 field put together. Yeah,
he's had a very strong career as a safety car driver, Bernd Mailander. He's been doing it for a long, long time now, I think since the mid-1990s. And still no news from the FIA on any kind of planned restart time or any kind of anything.
I spoke to him in Singapore last weekend at length, and he was telling me that he reckons he spent 2 years solidly in the safety car. It's an extraordinary amount of time.
What, sitting in it?
If you put together all of the time, because obviously he doesn't just do Formula One, he does other sessions as well. So 2 years of his life. He said it's well moulded by now into his body shape.
And most of it just sitting in it at the end of the pit lane.
Just hanging around.
Basically, yeah.
Just hanging around.
Yeah. You're hearing some noise of some replays, including Sebastian Vettel ending up in the gravel trap at the first corner. And this is Carlos Sainz's sound as he hit the barrier. Big thud, and was lucky not to go back across the circuit, to be honest, Carlos Sainz, and ended up out of the Grand Prix. So the order, as we are behind the red flag, or under red flag conditions, is still Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Ocon and Hamilton, the top 5. Alonso, Russell, Ricciardo, Tsunoda and Schumacher, the top 10. Here's Albon's radio.
I've got a problem with the engine, I think. Okay, we're going to have to stop the car on track.
And that was coming out of the hairpin. He then suddenly had no drive, basically, and the car ended up going into neutral. He then tried to get going again, but couldn't quite pull it off. So Albon out of the Grand Prix before it had really even got going. And that is the end of his race. He and Carlos Sainz, the two retirees from the Grand Prix so far. Lap 3 of 53 under red flag conditions. The race will resume at 14:50. Rolling start procedure. So the race will resume in 15 minutes time behind the safety car. Presumably they'll all be on the extreme wet tyres. And so racing will be going again in 15 minutes. Make that 14 minutes now.
It just showed a replay of Lewis Hamilton in the car going past the hoarding, and he missed it by millimetres. And it must have been really scary. And for Gasly, it must have been terrifying. Baffling. And not a good place to be in.
The other thing that I think viewers, listeners don't maybe haven't ever experienced is the onboard cameras that you see on the television when you're watching. That view, you get better visibility on them than you do in the car. The drivers are lower down than these cameras, so you're seeing even less than the pictures that we see on screen right now in front of us.
So 15 minutes until the safety car restart. Well, 13 minutes now until the race gets back underway. And how much as a... I mean, you're not going to know the answer to this, but how much do things sort of shock you as a racing driver that we think would be quite shocking, but you'd be quite calm about it? You know what I mean? If suddenly there's a car at the side of the road, we'd be a bit like, whoa. But are you quite chilled if it comes out of nowhere, or do you still get those like surprise moments?
Oh no, there's plenty of moments that do surprise you, but you deal with them when they come along, and then they're gone, and you forget about them immediately. You know, you guys, when you're sat here, you analyze it in the car. You think about it for a split second, and then you're on to the next thing, right? What's the next corner? How can I be quicker? How can I get the most out of these conditions? You know, that's part of it.
Esteban Ocon has just had a big jump over a river that is running down the middle of the pit lane.
He's got long legs, though. I would have had to have swam through that.
Yeah. So drivers getting ready again. And as I say, we'll be getting the race underway again in 12 minutes' time here on 5 Live. The Sam Bird, the Formula E driver for the Jaguar team, is alongside me, Jack Nicholls, and Jenny Gow, bringing you coverage of the 18th round of the Formula One World Championship. Verstappen is leading at the moment. Red flag is out, but if it finishes like this, he won't win the World Championship because he hasn't set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and we'll wait and see how long or how much running we still get. There will be more than one lap behind the safety car, is the announcement from race control. So that is just a clarification that we're going to be doing, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 maybe before the racing gets back underway. And I think this is something that after Spa 2020, which was a race that never really got going, there was a lot of frustration that the cars weren't out driving around to try and make it better behind the safety car, and that actually just driving around behind the safety car, although, okay, it's a bit boring, it's not exactly thrilling stuff for fans, but at least there's an attempt to sort of get the race back underway, as opposed to everybody sitting behind a red flag doesn't really achieve anything either.
Just getting some reaction from some of the drivers about this recovery vehicle being on track, and Alex Wertz, who's still heads up the GPDA, that's the Grand Prix Drivers Association, has put on social media, I think we need to discuss a tractor on track. We can keep it short. This must not happen, guys. And up and down the pit lane, I think there's quite a lot of upset from the drivers about what's happened. Sebastian Vettel also making comments saying next time they should inform us if there's a tractor on the road. I know we're under safety car, but in turn 12, there's this tractor. And Joe saying even the tractor on track, you can't see it 5 meters away. So I'm still waiting for a comment from the FIA, but as soon as I have something and they've made a statement, I will let you know. But we are aware of the incident. We have seen the incident. You maybe have not, but we are in the loop.
Given that Carlos Sainz went off there because of standing water, that standing water wasn't going anywhere. It was still going to be there, and regardless of whether it was green flag or safety car, it's still a very treacherous area. So I completely agree that the tractor to come onto the circuit, given the weather situation, given the visibility, it was absolutely not the right thing to do.
Yeah, completely agree. Not what anybody wants to see, a tractor on circuit like that, and that's why Gasly was so angry out there. The cars now, well, the drivers now getting strapped into their cars, getting back in, and the use of the extreme wet tyre is mandatory for this safety car restart, so everybody will be out on the full wets. Max Verstappen just making his way now down towards the end of the pit lane. Has a little jump over a puddle too, and then he'll get his feet cleaned and dried more accurately. He'll get his shoes dried. That's probably more accurate than getting his feet cleaned.
Well, maybe
that's his pre-race prep. A nice little foot wash.
This is a weird question to ask, and we are on BBC Radio 5 Live, so I apologise for that at 6:41 in the morning. But those boots are not waterproof, I'm assuming. Can you feel the water coming through? I mean,
they're rubber soled, aren't they? And then it's like a leather skin surrounding it.
But do you get soggy socks?
You can do. You can do.
So
that's why you jump over
cleaning
the
of feet might have happened.
Cleaning of feet is not so that you don't get damp feet, so that you don't slip on the pedals.
No, but literally cleaning of feet.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to just wiping the shoe.
Yeah, you could, clean the feet.
Just trying to find a way out of this for you, Jack. I think I should stop.
I think I was out of it.
I put you back in it.
So, lap 3 of 53 it'll be when the race gets back underway in 8 minutes' time here on 5 Live. The Japanese Grand Prix that Max Verstappen can win the title in, but at the moment we're all kind of waiting to see whether we even get to the end of this Grand Prix. 75% race distance is what is required in order to award full points for this, which is what Verstappen would need if he were to finish ahead of Charles Leclerc in second place in the Ferrari. He would need it to be a full points race in order to win the championship. If it was a half points race, he wouldn't have enough of an advantage over Leclerc. And everybody now getting back into the cars. Are you a get back in the car as soon as possible sort of chap, or would you be waiting around a little bit and maybe 5 minutes before you get going?
I don't know, it's something that I'm trying to actively change right now. Mentally, I found, especially recently, that if you get in the car early, especially before like a qualifying session, it's good to be ready and good to be prepared, but also at the same time your mind can start to think negative thoughts if you're alone in the car for too long. You start to overthink and overanalyze things. Whereas my teammate last year, he would jump in with seconds to go, have no time to think about it, and just go and perform and do it. And I think there's probably a middle ground that I'll be taking in the future. I used to jump in 10 minutes before. I think 5-6 minutes before driving away is fine.
So the car's starting to fire up 6 minutes before the racing gets back underway, or the car driving anyway. How much racing we will get remains to be seen in the Japanese Grand Prix.
It's a lot of ponchos out there in the stands. A lot of ponchos.
No, and I have to agree what you were saying earlier about running the Japanese Grand Prix in October. So often you get this weather. In fact, the last race in 2019, I'm fairly sure was Hagibis, wasn't it, Jenny? The last race in 2019. Yeah, and where Saturday running was completely called off ahead of time, and let's not even bother. And then I think Sunday was a lovely day, but if I recall correctly. But
yeah, Sunday was fine. That was a fairly intense race to cover, actually. One of the more intense ones I've done, because you didn't know what you were going to get, and you forget that Suzuka is coastal, and where we were staying was really close to the water's edge. And you kind of walk around the towns and they have these little signs to show you that if there's incoming water, where you need to go to be safe. It's so flat there. Like, you think of Fuji, Mount Fuji, beautiful elevation. There's nothing like that near Suzuka. So it was quite a kind of scary process to go through, thinking, well, how bad is this going to get? And in the end, okay, it wasn't as bad as we thought. I went out in it. I had an umbrella. It turned inside out. It was but the threat of it was there. And as you say, moving this race seems like the logical answer to it all.
Yeah, both Formula One and the World Endurance Championship do hold their Japanese rounds of their championships very late in the year, and I've never understood it, and I think it's for me, I would want to address it.
Less than 4 minutes till the restart now. Yuki Tsunoda is just getting strapped into his car. 9th place for him at the moment in the Grand Prix. Schumacher in 10th position. Tsunoda started 13th on the grid, gained 1 place because of Sainz's drama, but must have gained a couple of places out there. Lando Norris was one who fell back a little down the order, and Sebastian Vettel, who spun into the gravel on the opening corner, or before the opening corner of the Grand Prix, with 3.5 minutes now before the driving behind the safety car gets back underway.
Yeah, worth noting, I apologise if you've done this already, Jack Nicholls, but their use of wet weather tyres is mandatory behind the safety car. So everybody started on inters. They will, I mean, Gasly's already switched onto the wets, and that was noted because he did it in the pit stop. But yes, everybody will have to be on wet tyres.
Yeah, really interested to see what these conditions are going to be like. It's so difficult to get a gauge until those F1 cars go out, and I think they will be bad initially, and there's no way that we'll get running for the first, I would predict, at least 3 or 4 laps, and then maybe it'll start to clear up and we can go.
Yeah, there'll be one person that will be able to see where he's going, and that is Max Verstappen. I think everybody else will be on the radio saying, guys, visibility is really poor, grip is okay on the extremes, but visibility is very bad, and that's the difficulty at this track and in these kind of conditions with these huge tyres that we run in Formula One, and the amount of downforce and how low they are to the ground, and the speeds that they carry is the rooster tail of the rain and the water lifting up in the air and then staying in the air for a long period of time.
Because that was the strange thing with Singapore a week ago, which was wet, and they were on the wet tyres for most of the time, but there wasn't a huge amount of spray that came up.
It was just damp. A light amount of water on the surface, and it didn't really have any spray, just the water wasn't going anywhere. Whereas this is very, very wet now.
Yeah. 90 seconds until the safety car pulls. Restart suspended. Restart suspended is the message. So all the engines turn off in the pit lane, and the drivers are still sitting in the cars. So we'll see how long that is suspended for, whether that's indefinitely or what. Everybody had just basically left the cars to head back to the garage, and now they've all got to come back. They've taken the awnings down from above the cars and everything, and now they've got to suddenly drag all of the startup equipment and all of the electronic equipment and laptops that they plug into the cars. They've got to bring it all back again. So they'd just packed it all away.
This is curious.
Yeah.
I've never seen this before, when they say, OK, we're about to get going, 1 minute until we get going, and then all of a sudden it just stops. So back to square one. Here we go. Hope you are pleased with your decision to get up this morning to listen to what could be a title decider here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Our apologies for the conditions out in Japan. I mean, you run a race at this time of year.
We're not angry at you, Jenny. We're just disappointed.
I know your mum's listening. My mum is probably not quite as dedicated.
My mum would have listened yesterday, on Friday. She would have been up all hours.
That just reminds me of my mum and dad.
So a minimum of 10 minutes notice will be given to a restart. So they were going to do the restart, and then with 2 minutes to go, they've bailed out of it. And now we will have another 10-minute warning if there is going to be another restart. So the drivers will get back out of the cars, having just got back in the cars, and probably go back into the garage for a bit. So it's interesting why, because there was no safety car on track or anything like that. So it's interesting why they then opted not to carry on with the restart.
So I'm always one for optimism, Jack. My glass is normally very half full.
What, really half full?
It's really half full. I like to see the positive side of life. However, these clouds and this rain is not going anywhere. This water is here to stay, and my fear is that we will lack, for a better word, a proper Japanese Grand Prix today. See, we're looking at pictures now. The rain is really settled in. There's a huge amount of water out on the circuit, and with past experiences, the FIA are not going to allow the cars to go out there and actively race in these conditions because it's too dangerous. We might see cars go out on the circuit and circulate behind the safety car, but I do certainly feel like it's not raceable currently.
No, I would agree with that. but it's just so the conditions don't. It doesn't seem to have. There doesn't seem to have been a dramatic change since the time they decided to do a restart and then suspending the restart. The weather didn't really seem that it had changed it a huge amount, but that is the decision. George Russell still sitting in his cockpit of the car, nice and warm in the cockpit, I guess. 16 degrees the air temperature. Maybe that's the place you want to stay, or snug in there.
Snug as a bug. So I've just heard back from the FIA. This is in relation to Pierre Gasly being out on track and a recovery vehicle also being to the side of the track, but near the track as well. When he was going round, we saw Gasly absolutely furious when he came back. The FIA say in relation to the recovery of the incident on lap 3, the safety car had been deployed in the race, neutralised. Car 10, Pierre Gasly's car, which had collected damage and pitted behind the safety car, was then driving at high speed to catch up to the field. As conditions were deteriorating, the red flag was shown before car 10 passed the location of the incident where it had been damaged the previous lap. So that is the comment from the FIA.
So, they've said what happened, I suppose.
They have stated the facts of the case.
Yeah. That is the one. There's no real defence. It was red flag conditions when Gasly passed the tractor on track, and that's the only, and that doesn't make it acceptable. You've got to wait, in my opinion, until everyone's back in the pit lane.
But if they were,
that's the only mitigation.
If they were going to red flag it, Jack, what's the rush to get the recovery vehicle out on the circuit?
Well, yeah, I don't disagree.
So why not wait until everybody's gone past, everybody's in the pit lane, then send it out? Because look, we've had an incident in the past 8 years ago, and we don't need to be seeing that again. And I think especially that's why Pierre was so irate. It just shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. The incident that Sam's referring to is, of course, Jules Bianchi, who went off the track in 2014 and collided with a recovery vehicle and subsequently passed away from his injuries. And everybody is very aware of that moment in the sport's history, and that we don't want to see recovery vehicles on track when there is anybody on track. It's as simple as that for me. The FIA, I'm sure, will say more, but it was only just a red flag, and there were other vehicles who went past it, because I saw Sebastian Vettel on the footage as well. So I think more questions will undoubtedly be asked of the FIA and how we get ourselves into a situation like this, as you say, 8 years on.
And the thing with 8 years ago and Bianchi was that the recovery vehicle was off the circuit. And when we've had close calls before, including, I think 1994 Japanese Grand Prix, Martin Brundle, and even the Turkish Grand Prix qualifying in 2020, I think it was 2020, it could have been 21, but all of those situations, the recovery vehicles have been, off in the runoff areas, and that's been the concern. So for it to be actually on the track is not acceptable in any way. So we'll see what the FIA, whether the FIA say any more about that or just try and brush it away.
Let's hear from a man who is out of this race, car number 55, Carlos Sainz.
Carlos, can you just talk me through what happened on those opening few laps? Because it looked very tricky out there.
Yeah, basically, by the time we started the race, we were on inters, but the track was nearly into extreme conditions. I had no visibility, so I tried to get out of Checo's slipstream or Checo's water curtain, and suddenly I found myself in a puddle and lost. I had aquaplaning and lost the car, which the more scary part came a bit later, when I was stuck in the middle of the track and I could see cars coming, and I knew that they didn't see I was there. So quite tricky and dangerous conditions out there right now. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going to be the decision.
How scary was it when you were sat in the cockpit, and how much of an impact was it?
Obviously, because I had done half a lap before that, I knew that everyone coming behind me were not going to see me, and you could see also Gasly and a few others coming this close from taking me. So if there's no visibility, you're living you're leaving it in God's hand, you know, if one driver is going to spin and the others are going to see him. So I hope Race Direction takes the right decision.
I'm glad you're okay. Thank you.
Which is about 10 minutes, and it might last about 20 minutes. So I think it's probably another half an hour wait.
So that's Sebastian Vettel being told on the radio that we've got some heavy rain coming in 10 minutes, which will last for 20 minutes. So we're looking at another half an hour or so wait. Is what the Aston Martin weather forecasters believe to be the case. Sebastian Vettel down in 16th position after his spin on the first lap of the Grand Prix. Another interesting message from the FIA. Lap 1 turn 12 incident involving Gasly noted. So I presume but that would have been when he hit the hoarding. So not quite sure why that's been noted, but there we go. The McLaren mechanics, as ever, with the British
Jack,
teams. We've got some tea.
What lap did they say?
Lap 1.
Lap 1,
turn 12.
Okay, yeah.
So that'll just be him hitting the hoardings. So
can they note themselves? Can they put themselves under investigation?
Yeah.
People trying to keep warm out there. It's relatively chilly and slightly miserable when it comes to the weather, but do you know what? The fans at this racetrack never fail to amaze me. They're so committed, as we see Yuki Tsunoda running up the pit lane for some reason with an umbrella in his number 22 race suit. So committed, and such a family feel. More than any other circuit that we go to, fans of all age, everybody pours into this track, and they're all so excited, and there's just a massive cross-section of who they support as well. It seems like nobody is unsupported.
Absolutely. It's amazing. Wherever you go around the world, there's a different vibe in the stands. Obviously, you go to Silverstone, and it's very pro George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, and you'll see a lot of UK support, and we're very passionate about that. You go to Zandvoort, for example, and it's a sea of orange, and it's the Max Verstappen crazy, let's go for a party, and they're very rowdy, very noisy kind of atmosphere, but still fantastic. You go to Japan, and they're so honourable and wonderful and respectful. And as you said, Jenny, they support everybody. They're very passionate fans of their motorsport. They take time to create their own banners, their own hats, some incredible things that you see out in the stands. And I hope that the fans get a race today, because they've come out in their thousands. I think over 130,000 people there today. So I really do hope that they get a spectacle.
So just with the points situation, there was some changes made to the points regulations after Spa, basically. So at the moment, if the race didn't get going again in 2020, you may remember, this would have counted for half points. If the race never started again from now, you would get half points, because more than 2 laps have been completed, and but not 75%. There's now a much more sliding scale. So no points will be awarded if the leader has completed less than 2 laps. And equally, no points will be awarded unless a minimum of 2 laps have been completed by the leader without a safety car or virtual safety car intervention, which is the scenario we're in now, right? We got halfway around a lap before the safety car or the red flag came out. So if the race doesn't get going, no points would be awarded from here and now. So we would need at least 2 laps without a virtual safety car or a safety car to be awarded. But whatever the scenario, for Verstappen to win the championship by winning the Grand Prix with fastest lap of the race, we'd need to be past 75% race distance for him to get enough points to create a big enough gap to Leclerc.
Just out of interest, down at Alfa Romeo, Beat Zender has been speaking. He's the team manager, if I've got that right. Apologies if it's not 100% right. He says he doesn't believe the race will start or continue. And the last time he said that, Spa 21. So he's got good weather radar. Do you think Sam, do you think it should continue? Do you think the condition... I mean, we don't know what the weather conditions are going to do, but...
My honest opinion, thinking with my driver head, is that I don't think it's safe enough for 20 of these cars to be out on this circuit. I think it's too dangerous. I think it's too wet. I think that dare I say, it's an accident waiting to happen. There'll be more safety cars and more accidents occurring for the sake of cars going round. I don't think that's what we want to see or what we want to do as a sport.
The FIA have corrected themselves. Lap 2 turn 12 incidents involving Gasly noted. So that's what they've now put on the timing screens, is that they've noted that the tractor incident with Pierre Gasly. So there we go, for whatever that's worth. The McLaren team handing around some tea underneath the...
that is not tea.
That's not tea, it's soup, isn't it? Soup. If there's food, eat it, is the motto. But people will be wondering why there are races that happened in the past, and I'm not talking about, 1976, Japanese Grand Prix in Fuji that James Hunt won the World Championship in, would never have run these days. But why, even in the 1990s, there were races that would never have run today. Spa 1998, for example, you'd never run that today. And why do we think that is? Is it the amount of spray that these cars now produce? If it were Formula Ford cars out in these conditions with no aerodynamics and going a lot slower, would that be fine to race? What is it that has changed about Formula One racing in the wet?
I think the safety precautions are higher now. I think that the cars are quicker now. I also think the drivers sit in a slightly different position. We sit slightly lower down and lay down a little bit more, which makes visibility a bit more difficult. The tyres are wider with a different tread pattern, which makes the water rooster tail higher and visibility worse. So all these things combined, and with higher and better safety precaution in place, means that it's not feasible to drive in these conditions.
So, for those of you waking up on this Sunday morning, it's just gone 7 o'clock here on BBC Radio 5 Live. This is the Japanese Grand Prix, or at least we're trying to make it the Japanese Grand Prix. The race started an hour ago. On the first lap of the race, Carlos Sainz crashed out in the Ferrari in wet, treacherous conditions, and since then the red flag has been out and the cars have been parked in the pit lane for the last hour. They nearly restarted the race about 15 minutes ago, but then bailed out with a couple of minutes to go, and everybody now in the pit lane in Suzuka is just waiting to see what the FIA and race direction will decide to do. So we'll keep the chat going while the red flag is out. We've got Sam Bird, the Formula E driver for Jaguar Racing, alongside myself, Jack Nicholls, and Jenny Gao. And Leclerc actually got the best start going down towards the first corner, got to the inside of Verstappen. Verstappen held the lead around the outside and is in the lead of the Grand Prix, but no points would be awarded if the race doesn't get going again, and so Verstappen at the moment is looking unlikely to win his second World Championship in Suzuka. Jenny?
The rain absolutely pouring down still. The teams have erected little gazebos over the cars, and some drivers are chatting away to their race engineers. Other drivers like Daniel Ricciardo at McLaren is just sitting at the back of his garage with his headphones on in a little world of his own. And this week we've had a couple of driver announcements as well. So Alpine have recruited Pierre Gasly from AlphaTauri, and AlphaTauri will have Nick de Vries, who is pretty impressive when he got his first ever Formula One drive in place of Alex Albon at Monza, and he's been snapped up by the Red Bull programme, even though he was part of the Mercedes programme for years, and now at the age of 27, next year he will be driving a Formula One car. But unfortunately that means no place on the grid for Daniel Ricciardo next year, and I think people are still absorbing that news. And Sam Bird, for a driver of his calibre, for a race winner, a proven leader of teams. Yes, it hasn't worked at McLaren, but it is surprising to see that he has no place in Formula One from next season.
It is surprising, Jenny. It is, because, Daniel has been part of the Formula One scenery and part of the grid now for, 11 years? He's won multiple races. He's been in the top 3 in the World Championship a few times. He's driven for Red Bull. So it is surprising that he won't be on the grid, but that is the situation that we find ourselves in. I'm sure that he will come back to Formula One or have opportunities again.
Do you think he will? Do you
Yes.
think you can take a year out and then come
Well, we've seen
back?
the likes of Nico Hülkenberg, who his CV is not as strong as Daniel's in terms of race wins and podiums. But Nico Hülkenberg's able to get chances again and again, so why can't Daniel?
Well, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens with Ricciardo, because to me, I don't know what's going on at McLaren, and no one really seems to, but I still rate Daniel Ricciardo. I would still sign him up if I were an F1 team looking for a really good driver in the midfield. But the problem is he's been on 20 million a year for 5 years or something in that region. And if you are so for example, Haas, who seem like they might be signing Nico Hülkenberg, who Sam was just talking about, he'd be great at Haas, Daniel Ricciardo. I've no doubt about that. But does he want to go to Haas and race in the sort of lower reaches of the top 10, maybe get some points occasionally and not get paid a huge amount of money for it? I don't know.
But also it's a big risk for him to take, because if he doesn't go out and obliterate Kevin Magnussen, who is a very, very competent, good driver, then where does he go from there? It's a bit like Anthony Joshua fighting Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua doesn't want to take that fight, because if it doesn't go his way, where does he go from there? It's kind of similar situation.
But is that not so you think when he went to McLaren, Ricciardo, he felt, I should be able to beat Lando Norris? That didn't feel like a risk.
Absolutely. He was coming off the back of, he'd been at Red Bull and he'd beaten Sebastian Vettel. He'd kind of been close to matching, if not matched, Max Verstappen at the time, and then he had a season where he had dreadful reliability issues. He went to Renault/Alpine and delivered consistently and was top dog there. So of course he went to McLaren thinking, I'm up against this young hotshot, I'm going to put him in his place, and that wasn't the case. Lando stepped up, and Lando has delivered time and time again and shown how world class he truly is, and that he is an exceptional talent for the future. And it's really knocked Daniel's confidence. So now, wherever he goes next, he needs to pick very carefully when he gets the opportunity, and he needs to come back and really deliver and beat his next teammate if he wants to have another opportunity with a bigger team.
Yeah, fascinating to see what happens. The clock has now continued to tick, the race clock, because you get basically a 3-hour window in which to complete the race. So once we started the race at 2 o'clock in Japan, you then have until 5 o'clock to get to the end of the Grand Prix, or to get the Grand Prix done. And the 2-hour, and the race is 2 hours long. So therefore the clock is still ticking. It usually stops with a red flag, but now we've had this delay. They've got 1 hour and 53 minutes until the race ends, whatever happens.
If there is a race, it may. The only way that will change is if it's called off by the FIA and they declare that the situation is too risky to go out there and run. So the clock may tick down, or we may have an official abandonment of the event, I suppose.
Yeah, if there's 20 minutes left on the clock, they might say, well, we're done here.
And just to keep you updated, another announcement from the FIA saying that the lap 2 turn 12 incident involving car 10 Gasly will be investigated after the race. So the stewards, I said it quite glibly, but the stewards will sit down and look at what happened with Gasly on track. He was going apparently fast to catch the chasing pack after he'd pitted, because he got a large bit of hoarding stuck on the front of his car after Carlos Sainz span off and crashed. Now, he came in with that hoarding to get it removed and get a front wing change after the first lap. He then went out and tried to catch the rest of the field, which was under the safety car. And while he was going round, there was a recovery vehicle on track. Now, plenty of the other drivers saw that recovery vehicle on track as well when they went past it. But the incident will be investigated by the stewards after the race. And I will be fascinated to see what they say and whether they are just investigating Gasly for doing something wrong is my fear, and not actually for looking at the incident in itself, in its entirety.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, it's impossible to know the FIA's reasoning at the best of times, but also in this scenario, whether they're getting a lot of, whether that's just we will look at this after the race, rather than a Gasly being under investigation. That would be my hope, is that by putting the message out there that we will be investigating this, it will not exactly stop people talking about it, but at least be okay, fine, understood. We will look into this, rather than Gasly's going to get a penalty now for doing it, for driving too quickly under red flag conditions or whatever.
I will try and clarify that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we do talk about the incident, and we do make people aware of it, and we do bring it up to the FIA, who have released a statement. If you didn't hear it before, they released a statement saying in relation to the recovery of the incident on lap 3, the safety car had been deployed and the race had been neutralised. Car 10, Gasly's car, which had collected damage and pitted behind the safety car, was then driving at high speed to catch up to the field. As conditions were deteriorating, the red flag was shown before car 10 passed the location. And when I say before, it was a couple of metres before he passed the location of the incident, i.e. the recovery vehicle, where it had been damaged from the previous lap. So, we're still trying to analyse and get to the bottom of it a little bit more.
So that recovery vehicle was on track when Verstappen passed. When the safety car and Verstappen came past, the recovery vehicle was on circuit. So the whole field did go past it, and that itself in dry conditions is a moderately normal scenario. Even in dry conditions, I wouldn't expect there to be a large recovery vehicle on track while cars are going round. I don't think so anymore. But they've got to recover the car behind the safety car. That's why they've put a safety car, so they can recover the car on circuit. So I don't think that in itself is too abnormal. But in these conditions, that's, to me, the big difference.
Exactly. That's the big difference. You know, we do see it in the dry, that they neutralise the race, and they do deploy a vehicle of sorts to get a stricken or damaged vehicle off the circuit. But I think that the FIA have to look at these conditions and say this is not safe and normal conditions to be able to put a vehicle out on the circuit anywhere or in the confines of the circuit. So we wait until everybody's back in the pit lane under red flag conditions, and then we recover the vehicle.
Interestingly, Jules Bianchi's father, Philippe Bianchi, has been on social media, and he said no respect for the life of the driver, no respect for Jules' memory, incredible, with quite a lot of angry faces with an emoji. And I think it's a very difficult situation for these drivers to be in as well. A lot of them were very close friends with Jules, and they've just driven past a recovery vehicle on track.
No, and it's very tough, and it's definitely coloured with the memories of Bianchi's accident 8 years ago. The fact it's at this circuit in those conditions certainly brings up comparisons. But I think there is an argument that if the cars are all in a train behind the safety car going slowly, it is fairly standard procedure to then have a recovery vehicle on the circuit. But as we say, in these conditions, is that the correct decision? And when the cars are not all bunched up behind the safety car. That's the other point, is that Gasly, because he'd pitted, was not behind the safety car at that point, was not in the train. So was it therefore safe to release that vehicle when the cars are not all bunched up behind the safety car? So it's a discussion that'll run and run, and the red flag is still out, and Max Verstappen is still in the lead of the Japanese Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live, that has had half a lap of racing. Saw some overtakes. It's a great fight between Verstappen and Leclerc for the lead. Alonso wheel to wheel with Hamilton. Hamilton cutting back underneath him at the hairpin. So Joe made an overtake on Albon and then spun. Had quite a lot of action in that first half a lap, but then Carlos Sainz crashed out, and that brought out the safety car and subsequently the red flag for the conditions. And the clock is ticking down with 1 hour and 47 minutes until the mandatory end of the Japanese Grand Prix. And the weather is still pretty set in at the moment. The medical car has been out and done a couple of laps here and there, but not lapping consistently, and every time it goes out it looks as though the conditions are pretty similar at the moment. I'm sure we'll get more play this afternoon in the football here on 5 Live. We've got West Ham versus Fulham coming up at 2 o'clock, and then really interesting match at 4:30 with Arsenal versus Liverpool in the Premier League.
Big game.
Are you looking forward to it?
Oh, well, if we ever leave here.
That's very true. We've got we've got 7 hours till kick-off, so surely we can make it.
Let's hope so. Well, you've got to you just walk home.
Well,
I don't have that luxury.
You'll make kick-off, don't worry.
Yeah, okay.
Don't worry.
I like your jumper, by the way. Is that a jump? Would you classify that as a jump? It's a
jumper.
Jack's wearing a sort of a quarter zip. Is it cashmere?
No.
What is it?
I don't know.
Sort of wool.
No, not wool. I don't know what it's made. Cotton?
Looks synthetic to me, that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
You can look at the label if you want.
No, it's okay. I'm fine. That's quite nice, though.
We're going to need refreshment soon. Japan Grand Prix title deciders. This one, I don't think is going to go down in the record books as epic. I don't even know if it's going to be a title decider at this point.
It's not going to be a title decider.
It doesn't
Jenny.
look like.
I think we can safely say that Austin. I think it's going to be in Austin. That's my opinion.
Well, it could run and run. We'll see.
Absolutely.
But there have been some cracking title deciders, and I just wondered what your favourites were.
Damon Hill. That's my favourite. Come on, as a British driver, always remember Murray Walker saying those eternal words. Yeah, and I've got to stop now because I've got a lump in my throat. Superb stuff.
It was tremendous. I was 6 getting up at, and that was in the days before they... Actually, it was probably about this time, wasn't it? So it was probably about a 6 a.m. race start, and you get up and watch it, and it's just majestic, because he'd already won it, because Jacques Villeneuve lost the wheel coming through turn, I think it was 1 and 2, wasn't it? I think he came out the pits and went straight off, and so Hill had the championship wrapped up, but he just dominated the race anyway. It wasn't a great race in itself, because it was fairly straightforward for Hill, especially after Villeneuve retired, but a great moment for Damon Hill and for the Williams team.
I mean, the other one wasn't at this circuit, obviously. It was at Fuji.
Oh, you're going back to 76.
I'm going back to 76 with James Hunt. He needed to do something extraordinary in the latter stages of the race. He managed to pull it off. If any of you haven't seen the Hollywood blockbuster that is what's it called? Rush. It's most definitely worth a watch, maybe on a lazy Sunday afternoon after you've listened to us, of course, and the football.
Once the football's finished, have a watch of Rush.
It's NFL this weekend. What are you talking about? Watch it tomorrow.
Are you going to be watching the NFL?
One of my very good friends is going today.
Oh, okay. Because that's a sport that I want to enjoy to watch, but I've got no idea on the rules, so I find it quite difficult to get into.
I think a lot of people say that about Formula One.
Right now, exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of people listening now, driving down the M6 or something, and they're 5 Live listeners, and they're thinking, what is going on? Why don't they just race the cars? Well, it's too wet. It's absolutely soaking in Suzuka, just outside of Nagoya, which in itself is about 90 minutes or so on the bullet train down from Tokyo. and the rain is continuing to pour. The light is starting to go, and we only did half a lap of racing before the red flag was called about an hour and 15 minutes ago now, and we're just getting some, and I think we are in a heavy rain period. I would say this is the heaviest rain that we've had all day.
To try and give the listeners a better idea and understanding of what it's like to drive a car in these conditions. I mean, we've all done it, haven't we, where we've been driving down the motorway in torrential rain with the wipers going like the clappers and the cars skidding around a little bit with a bit of standing water, and you're thinking, this is uncomfortable. I'm not particularly enjoying this drive. Imagine that, but about 5 times worse, and you don't have a windscreen wiper, and your visor is fogged up, and you're right behind a car in front. I mean, right behind him. That's what it's like in single-seater racing cars in the wet conditions, in this kind of wet conditions. It's not a fun experience.
And you can't. There must be such a weird... On the motorway, you can take it steady. You can be like, oh, right, well, I'll slow down. But you're still, if you're racing, you've still got to go fastly, because you've got to win.
You've got to go fastly?
Yeah.
Fastly? Great English.
I tell you what, Alex Albon has been out there on the track today. He drives for Williams. Unfortunately, his car stopped on track, so let's hear from him.
Alex, obviously sorry to see you out so early in that race. Can you just talk me through what the problem was?
Yeah, I had a slight contact at the start, and it was a small incident actually, but it just hit where the radiator was, and we lost some pressure, water pressure, so I had to retire. You know, it was one of them things that visibility was non-existent. I think I could see barely from me to you away. I'm sure it was bad for everyone, but the cars at the back, we were not even able to keep it in a straight line. I mean, literally using the white line at the track edge to kind of know where we were, because we couldn't see kind of further than 5 meters in front of us. So it was almost like we were just staring at the sides, corner of our eyes, to see where we were on circuit. Yeah, it's a shame. And I mean, I think whatever everyone sees on onboards, it's 100 times worse out there on track. It's really bad out there.
So at times, I guess it's quite scary, right? When you can't see that close.
It is. It's a tricky one. I don't know if it's this circuit in particular, but that's the worst I've experienced. Maybe the other guys have seen worse, but that was kind of like it was kind of a guessing game, and I'm surprised, to be honest, only 2 cars DNF'd in lap 1.
Oh, I'm glad you're okay. Hard luck.
So that's Lawrence Barretto talking to Alex Albon, the other car out there who crashed out. Big spin, Carlos Sainz. He's okay as well, but obviously not taking any further part in this weekend's proceedings, if there are any. And I've just had official notification from the FIA about this incident with Pierre Gasly, and he has been asked to go to the steward's office, local time at 6 p.m, so in about 2.5 hours' time. And it's for alleged breach of Article 57.2 of the FIA Formula One sporting regulations, which is speeding under red flag conditions. Car 10 reached speeds of up to 250 kilometres an hour when completing the lap under the red flag after passing the scene of the incident. The incident being the crashed car of Carlos Sainz and a large recovery vehicle.
Okay. Well, that one's going to run and run, isn't it? Over the rest of the day and the coming weeks. There's no doubt about that. 250 kilometers an hour under a red flag condition is quick. There's no denying that. An hour and 38 minutes still running on the clock, and there's been no update on when the race will start again at any point. And we are, broadly speaking, pessimistic that
not
the
even
race
broadly. Not even broadly speaking. I cannot see any way in which this race will restart, I'm afraid. Which, if you like the Austin Grand Prix and if you like the championship going down to another race, then that's a good thing, because we'll be in Austin, we'll bring you all of the action, we'll bring you previous shows, we'll bring you interviews, we'll bring you a race, hopefully.
What's the forecast looking like?
Lovely.
Nice. Lovely. Oh, great.
The long-range forecast for Austin is looking delightful.
I'm jealous of you guys. Very jealous.
It's always a good race as well.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I think the track's a great track. What is your favourite track, by the way, on the F1 calendar, Sam?
My favourite track on the F1 calendar, as a driver or as a spectacle stroke sort of fun?
Driver.
As a driver, I very much enjoy Silverstone, Monza, Spa.
Oh, you're a classic man, a traditionalist.
However, I also enjoy Singapore. I do really enjoy Singapore. So yeah, I suppose I'm a traditionalist in a sense, but then I've got Singapore in there as well. What about you guys?
Did you race GP2 Singapore?
Yeah, I'm the last winner.
Really?
I'm the last person to win a GP2 race in Singapore.
Wow.
There we go. I hold a record.
Was it
until they go back there?
Was it what was it? Was it? Did you just dominate?
Started on pole, led every lap, got fastest lap. There we go. It was a sprint race.
Yeah.
But you know, someone had to win it.
Yeah.
That's good stuff, by the way.
Thank you very much. It was my 5th win that year, so that was good.
The medical car is just making its way, splashing its way, honestly, down the pit lane. The rain is getting worse now, there's no doubt about that. And the medical car is now leaving to go out on circuit once more. And even if this were... Oh, he's crossed white line at pit exit.
Oh, that's a drive-through.
That's a drive-through penalty for the medical car.
Who drives the medical car now? Because it used to be Alan van der Merwe.
Yeah, I don't know who it is this weekend.
I don't know who it is now.
I know the answer to this. He's such a nice guy, and I can't...
It's not Bruno Correa, is it?
I think it might be.
He does it sometimes. Bruno does it sometimes.
Fantastic.
But he does every Formula E race as the safety car driver.
He is such a lovely man, and he's very good, and he loves his job.
Yeah.
You can really tell that he really enjoys his job.
Yeah, but I don't know if he's doing... I presume he is doing it this weekend, but I don't know for sure, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah, lovely man, and he's driving the medical car currently around the circuit to check on conditions. Everybody else just sort of standing to attention, really, and waiting to, like coiled springs, just in case there is any messaging about getting the racing restarted again. But the medical car is just coming through the 2 Degner corners, named after the motorcycle racer from years gone by, and the conditions are as they have been for the whole Grand Prix, really, coming up into the hairpin now, and there's a standing water a little bit here and there. In fact, there's quite a lot on the exit of the hairpin.
Now that's the standing puddle that Carlos Sainz, we've just seen a picture there, exiting turn 11. There is a river across the circuit that Carlos Sainz has hit while upshifting, and that has forced him into the wall effectively. It's pitched the car into quite a long slide stroke spin, and then it sent him into the wall, and that's why Carlos Sainz is out of the race after 1 lap, or not even a lap, Jack, half a lap.
Yeah, it was. We have 1 hour 34 remaining on the clock now, so we're getting to the point. Well, I think let me just try and work this out. We must be at the point now where more than 75% race distance is impossible, even if the race were to begin right now. I think we're not at a position where 75%. Well, in fact, right now is the time, isn't it? Because it's 2 hours long, so 30 minutes in is going to be 75%. So we are pretty much at the point now where Max Verstappen cannot win the championship today.
Good maths. Lando Norris has taken to social media, the McLaren driver, about the incident with the recovery vehicle being out on track as cars were still going round under safety car conditions. And he says, how's this happened? We lost a life in this situation years ago. We risk our lives, especially in conditions like this. We want to race, but this... unacceptable. And I would imagine that every driver will be asked about this, and every driver will be quite forthright in their opinions after this after this event has come to a close in Japan.
Yeah, and I would, and I'm not defending the FIA or saying what happened was correct in any way. When I sort of say that it's not unusual procedure for what happened to happen, and so that's why I think that. But that doesn't mean it's the right decision. But there is sort of precedent for when cars are behind the safety car, the medical car goes out on circuit to, you know, collect the driver if they've had an accident. And cars, other vehicles on circuit are a thing behind when the cars are in a train behind the safety car. That is fairly standard procedure, but there do need to be questions asked whether in these conditions and in that scenario it is the right way of going about it. And obviously a lot of the drivers feel it, or all of the drivers who have spoken feeling that it is unacceptable what happened, and that, as I say, that'll run, I think, over the next well, it'll be all anyone talks to the drivers about after the race, I would have thought. And you will guarantee, so on a Friday, after the sessions of practice, the drivers go into, Yuki Tsunoda's just standing on the catch fencing or the gap in the catch fencing and waving to the fans to try and keep them a little bit entertained. Of course, Yuki Tsunoda, Japanese driver, first time we've had a Japanese driver back in Formula 1 since 2013. But yes, I think on a Friday evening, all of the drivers get together with the FIA and F1, and they sit there and they talk to the race director about any concerns that they have. And I'm sure that this will be a very well discussed event in Austin on Friday evening after the running has happened. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see the GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, kind of activate themselves and speak up, because it's a pretty serious incident to happen, and that it's happened in Japan. And we saw immediately after the incident Pierre Gasly absolutely furious in his garage, and we were trying to work out what had happened because, of course, we hadn't seen the footage then. We didn't know what had gone out on track. Yes, there will certainly be questions asked as we count down on the clock to 1 hour and 30 minutes left of this red flag potential race. Potential race, I like it. Do you like that? Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. 7:33 this morning, Sunday morning, BBC Radio 5 Live. Yeah, we will be heading to weekend breakfast here on 5 Live in half an hour or so. And then the sporting action begins at midday with Steve Crossman bringing you all of the action from this afternoon's Premier League kickoffs, including Arsenal versus Liverpool at 4:30. Lando Norris in the garage just having a chat with his mechanics and engineers. On hashtag BBCF1, Jack Murley says, I've said it before and I'll say it again, if conditions mean it's impossible to complete the race by car, drivers should do it on foot. 2 laps in PE kit, cross-country style, with elbows tripping and general shenanigans encouraged. You'd watch. I totally agree, and the order would be very, very different to the order that we see currently out there. Who's running a cross-country running race out of F1 drivers? Who's winning a these are such cross-country conditions, aren't they? 16 degrees, tipping it down with rain. So I believe that this is a tricky one. I think from where he would start in the running race, I think Ocon's a no-brainer would win. I think that he's got Ocon's P4 at the moment. Yeah, I think given the PE shoes, I think he's overtaking Perez early doors. I think Charles has a good chance, but I think Ocon's going to get the win. I can't see Max holding on. Can I ask you a genuine question? Yes. How fit do you have to be an F1 driver? Extremely fit. But it's a different kind of fitness. I mean, you go to the gym and you see the guys lifting heavy weights and getting big, and people consider that to mean that you're fit. We need to be strong, but we need to be light. We need to be able to have a great cardiovascular endurance while still having great strength, especially in our core, our legs, our arms and our neck. Because these are very physical cars to basically wrestle around a track for 90 plus minutes. We also need to endure extreme heat and not lose concentration and focus. So all of those things combined, yes, everybody there is very, very fit. Well, this Japanese Grand Prix began on time at 2 o'clock, which was an hour and a half ago now. But after half a lap of racing, it was red flagged off because of an accident for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. ending up in the barriers. And since then, conditions have not got any better. They maybe have got a little bit worse. And as a result, we're still under red flag conditions. The cars parked up in the pit lane about an hour and a half ago and have remained there ever since. The race clock is running, so there's an hour and 27 minutes on that before the session or the race has to come to an end, whatever happens. So we appear to, broadly speaking, just be waiting for the Grand Prix to end when the clock ticks down to zero. So a fairly anticlimactic Japanese Grand Prix currently. Max Verstappen, for what it's worth, is leading. Leclerc is second, Perez third, Ocon fourth, Hamilton fifth. Leclerc got a better start than Verstappen, took the lead into turn one, but Verstappen held it all the way around the outside at turns 1 and 2 and managed to hold on to that first place. But as it stands, no points would be awarded and Max Verstappen would not win the World Championship here. It would go on to the next Grand Prix in Austin in 2 weeks' time. Myself, Jack Nicholls, the Formula E driver Sam Bird, and Jenny Gow with you this morning here on 5 Live.
And you were correct about who was driving the medical car. The medical car and the safety car are the only ones who have got much lappery done out there at the moment, because they keep going out and just seeing quite how much water there is out on track. That's normal procedure that they pop out every now and again. And you were right with your driver choice for who was in that car. It is Bruno Correa, who has taken over the role of driving the medical car. And they have to be, they're all former world endurance champion drivers, or pretty decent in a car, because they have to do an incredible job, which is to go incredibly fast ahead of cars that can go even faster than them. So
I've never actually looked into Bruno's racing history, honestly. I don't know what he used to race in. Single seaters, Formula Ford, Spanish Formula Renault, won the junior championship there, and then he went to the USA to race in Skip Barber. Interesting. And then he was appointed the official World Touring Car safety driver in 2005. So he's been driving safety cars and medical cars a long time, Bruno Correa. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. Lovely man. I've been lucky enough to have a few laps around tracks with Bruno taking me around, and he's always chatty and friendly. But he's got more driving today than he necessarily would have wanted. I always think that as a safety car driver, because you kind of want to do driving, I guess, but you also don't want to do driving.
I think.
Would you be a safety car driver?
No. I like sitting here next to you, Jack.
Oh, that's kind.
And you, Jenny.
Thank you.
A pleasure. I think that they're professional enough to know that if they're not needed, it's for the good of the sport. In most occasions. So yeah, I think if they're not needed, they're happy enough. I mean, they're not paid by the amount of laps they do.
That is exactly the line that Bert Mailander used when I was talking to him last week.
Really?
He said, luckily I'm not paid by the lap, so I just sit there and I get it anyway.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, fair
good
enough.
stuff.
Fair
Good
enough.
stuff.
He'd be paid well this weekend.
Yeah, very much so. A reminder that we still have 5 races to go this season. It's USA and then Mexico for you in 2 weeks' time. Obviously, it's USA, then it's Mexico. And then Brazil, and the season closes out in the 22nd round in Abu Dhabi. So that's what we've got to look forward to. And then 24 races next year. It's a bonanza.
Enough. It's absolutely going to be thrilling. It's going to be very interesting and super busy for everybody involved.
Hashtag BBC F1 if you do want to get in touch. 20 minutes to 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we've got an hour and 23 minutes on the clock. And it's Max Verstappen who is currently leading this Grand Prix. We're waiting to see whether the red flag will come in and we can get going again. And there's the fans are now starting to have some fun. There's a man running all along the grandstands trying to get them to wave. The Japanese fans are unbelievable, because after the race they replay the race on the big screens around the track. They won't do it with this one, I'm pretty sure, but the fans will stay and watch the race again.
This is a thriller.
Yeah, maybe not this one. Maybe not this one. Phil says 5 a.m. alarm, Mackie's breakfast, whole family up, mates round, all for half a lap of racing. Tough. Yeah, and full commitment to those of you who got up for the start of this Grand Prix. If you didn't, you haven't missed anything. Half a lap of racing before Carlos Sainz hit the barriers. He was okay, but the red flag was deployed, and then the rain has just continued since then, with an hour and 22 minutes left until the race has to be declared over, and so that is about 9 o'clock in the UK, which is 5 o'clock in Japan. What frustrates me here is there's no real... It's just the lack of communication, broadly speaking.
With the FIA?
And in a shocking turn of events. But there's no sort of, right, we're waiting for this, or we're waiting for, this weather front's coming through, or this is kind of our running plan, or even just, guys, we're just sitting and waiting and hoping it stops raining. There's just no... You just end up with no sort of communication at all. So we're all sitting here, all the fans are sitting here. What's the plan?
Well, hope that the rain sort of dies down a bit and then reassess. I don't think there's much more that the FIA can really tell us. It's, newsflash, it's really wet and the cars are not capable of driving in these conditions. Now, they keep on sending out the medical car and occasionally the safety car every 20 minutes or so to just check on conditions, but it's not changing. This weather is set in now. My concern is that we have seen all of the running that we're going to see today. I really hope that's not the case, but my heart is telling me that is my head is telling me that that's the case.
What's your heart telling you?
My heart's telling me let's get going.
Such a shame for these fans as well. We've got about 100,000 fans that have poured into Suzuka. They're all wrapped up in their Kaguls and Pacamax. They've come well prepared, because obviously a lot of them are from Japan and they know the climate, they know what they were expecting. But I have to say, we've had a 2-year break because of coronavirus. This is the first time we've been back since then, and now they don't really get to see. They don't really get to see so much action. So I feel very disappointed for them.
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's very tough. There's no doubt about that. And same with Spa, and same with this is the thing. It's actually quite a rare thing for a Formula One race to get fully rained off. It really doesn't happen that often. Obviously, there was Spa last year, but that was the first one since, I want to say, the Australian Grand Prix of 1991, I think, was the last time that a race sort of got rained off. Someone's brought their boombox, haven't they?
The Mexican fans are out
getting
in
the party
force.
started.
Sergio Perez fans, by the way, are incredible. I was with a few of them last weekend, and they always keep the faith. They are always there for Sergio Perez. They travel the world for him. They take the Mexican flag, and they just have an absolute whale of a time going around the world supporting their man. And what a treat they got last time out in Singapore when he won the race.
Yeah.
Don't think any of them were really expecting it. It was great.
No, exactly. It was a really strong performance from Sergio Perez. One of the best of his career, to be honest, because he's had a really difficult season. Well, he had a strong start to the season, Sergio Perez, and then sort of tailed off a little bit and was starting to struggle. But then it all kind of came right for him in Singapore, aided by Max Verstappen's qualifying problems. So he started a little bit further down the grid and then got a poor start as well. But Perez held off Leclerc fairly comfortably in the end. It was a really entertaining race. Leclerc looked like he was getting closer and closer and closer, but then Perez was able to hold him off. And there was one moment where Leclerc made a mistake and Perez got sort of over a second away, and then he just disappeared, didn't he? That was the impressive part for me, because Leclerc had been so close for so long, but then Perez managed to win by 7.5 seconds.
I think it was his best drive in Formula One to date. He came out at the beginning of the season and he looked comfortable in the car, and Max, I think, at the beginning of the season was not as comfortable with this car. It was a Red Bull car that had a little bit of understeer in it. Max is typically not a fan of that because he finds it slower, which ultimately, as a racing driver, it is. But Sergio was able to extract relatively more performance given his talent set out of the car than Max was able to, given his. The car was then worked on. They made some gains over the first 5 or 6 races, and then all of a sudden the car came more towards Max's liking and less towards Sergio's liking. Sergio then went through a lull, but certainly I think the conditions that we found in Singapore were more suited to his driving style. With a weaker front because the track was slightly slippery. He was able to extract good performance from the car. Other people had difficult days. He drove a superb race and came away with the win.
Oki, who's a regular listener, has tweeted in #BBCF1, I live in Japan and finally get a race where I don't have to be up at midnight on a Sunday, and this happens. So many... feel very sorry for you, Oki. Sorry about that. And we had a second. JD says, I second the vote for cross country. Currently running a 10K. Think I'd have the measure on Ocon. So JD tweeting while running a 10K.
Oh, what's JD's time for a 10K?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And has he done a marathon? Because I recently did the London Marathon.
Really? You never mention it.
I've mentioned it once and it was on a Friday, so I mention it again. It's Sunday. This is going out to lots of people, so yeah. If you want to, go on my Just Giving page and please donate to my 2 chosen charities. Thank you very much.
An hour and 16 minutes on the clock. What was your time in the marathon?
3 hours, 18 minutes.
You should have been sub 3 though, shouldn't you?
I should have been, but look, Kipchoge's got nothing to worry about with me.
You did no training though.
I didn't do much. No, my longest run was I quite enjoy a half marathon. During training, I don't enjoy going above 20k, so I just didn't, and I just got round the marathon.
Just 20k?
20k, yes.
So you'd never completed more than half distance of marathon?
No, never. So I found the last 6 miles challenging, to say the least. My hip bones and my knees were in pieces, and then 2 days later it was my calves and my quads and my IT bands. And I'm sure my IT bands.
What's an IT band?
It's a band that goes from your hip down to your knee on the side of your quadricep.
Oh, I've had that hurt sometimes. It's called an IT band.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Not after your computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to be confused with the IT crowd.
Very different.
But it certainly does take mental courage and strength to get through those last 6 miles in a marathon. And hats off to everybody who completed it, took part, and congratulations, I think, as well go to all the organisers and the volunteers that help have an event like that. It's simply incredible.
Oh, I wonder if we are going to get some sort of race. Not the race we were hoping for, but they've got some rubber duckies down at Alfa Romeo, and they've numbered them up, so it looks like we might get the rubber ducky race of 2022. On a slightly more serious note, Christian Horner's been speaking. He's the team principal for Red Bull, as I'm sure you are aware. He's been speaking about the incident at the beginning of this race where a recovery truck was on track in those wet conditions, under safety car conditions, and he said it's totally unacceptable. We lost Jules Bianchi here. That should never, ever happen. There needs to be a full investigation as to why a recovery vehicle was on circuit. Sergio Perez reported it to the team as well when he was out on track. So, extraordinary scenes at the Japanese Grand Prix to have a recovery vehicle out on track in such bad conditions, visibility very low when the recovery vehicle went out there to go and retrieve Carlos Sainz's car. It was Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari who span out and crashed. Alexander Albon got contact and suffered a technical failure as well. So the Williams and the Ferrari were the 2 cars that are out. 18 cars in the pit lane still waiting to try and take a race start, albeit under safety car procedures. It was going to happen. And then at the last moment, with like a minute and a half to go, they pulled the start and said actually they were not going to go. And so we still wait, and the fans still, despite that rain, in a buoyant mood, I think it's fair to say. Lots of them here to see whether Max Verstappen would be crowned champion here. Of course, his car powered by Honda, the circuit owned by Honda. Not to be for them today, it looks like.
Patrick says, listening to BBC F1 and hearing how fit how F1 drivers are really fit, does anyone remember Superstars Jody Scheckter?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I remember Superstars, like, conceptually, but was Jody Scheckter good or bad?
Oh, I don't know the actual episode. I was just chuckling to myself about Superstar. It was such a good concept, and they tried to bring it back, but it didn't quite work anymore. But I saw it
in its new format. But
someone's going to have to tell us what happened.
Was Jody Scheckter good or bad on Superstars? The 1979 Formula One world champion.
But I think the modern day Formula One driver is a lot more conditioned.
He won the 5th World Superstars.
There we go.
Title.
I was going to say that I think we're far more conditioned now than drivers were back then. I think that diet and fitness and maintaining one's fitness is a lot better now than it
Michael Schumacher changed that, didn't he, really? When you look back at how drivers were pre-Schumacher and then when Schumacher came in, because obviously you worked side by side with Michael Schumacher in your Mercedes days, he was an absolute game changer when it came to fitness.
Well, he brought his own. He was sponsored by Techno Gym, which is a large fitness industry machine supplier.
And there are other machine suppliers, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly, there are, each their own. But he would have a Techno Gym truck at all of the European races, and after testing or on a Friday evening, he'd be back in the gym in his bespoke Techno Gym truck working out again. The other drivers are sitting down having a coffee or having dinner. Michael's in there working out, pumping iron, getting on the treadmill, getting on the bike. And he changed the game, and since then we've seen fitness fanatics like Mark Webber, like Jenson Button with his triathlons. Lewis Hamilton keeps extremely fit these days. So, Fernando Alonso is a big-time cyclist, and I think he actually co-owns a cycling team, or certainly used to. So the game has changed massively in the last sort of 15, 20 years.
So, red flag conditions here at the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka. Max Verstappen at the moment leading the race in inverted commas, but we have an hour and 10 minutes on the race clock. And Bernard, there's a good question from Bernard. Will this still count as a Verstappen win in the record books? I don't know. If there's no points awarded, which would be the case currently, has there been a race? I don't know. That's a really interesting question.
I feel like that's one for the statisticians / historians / rule makers. I don't know. It's a really good question.
Great question.
Really good question. Jeremiah's been in touch as well on hashtag BBC F1 saying, what a pain it is to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch the Japanese Grand Prix, only for the rain to say sleep should have been the better option. I'm sorry.
Every time the medical car goes out on track, I think, maybe it's a bit...
Maybe not.
...clearer. And you know what? I think it's a little bit clearer currently.
I think the rain has subsided, but there's still a huge amount of standing water on track.
There's a few bits. There's a little river that the medical car has just gone through there. You know what? Wow, there's a bit of standing water, isn't there, still? A few rivers.
Windscreen wipers still on the medical car, and visibility now is starting, not visibility from spray, I mean, that would be a huge problem, but then visibility just because it's overcast and sunsets at 5:27 local time. So you're going to start losing light within the next 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's an hour and 8 minutes on the clock to run down.
Still quite a bit of spray coming from the medical car as he comes into 130R and down towards the chicane. Red flag still out. Those conditions felt a little bit like you could do a few laps behind the safety car and see how it goes. That didn't look it doesn't look quite as absurd as it did half an hour ago.
But I still think that if this race gets going, it'll be more remarkable than Sebastian Vettel's hair coming back.
Wow. Burn.
No, I don't mean that in any bad way. Because
really? Because it sounded a
no,
little...
No. There's nothing. Look, I know of other people that have had the same procedure, and it's superb, and it does transform your head. There's a couple of drivers in Formula E who have had it done, and Seb's obviously gone that option, and but it's very long. It is very long.
He's gone full. Is it beyond Borg that he's gone?
He's fully embraced having a full head of hair. Maybe that's what I need to do. That's where I'm going wrong. I mean, I'm not far away from going down to the clinic and.
Would you? In all honesty, would you get a hair transplant? I'm just asking. He just said he's
I don't know.
fairly close to going to do it. I find it a fascinating.
If the hairline goes any further backwards, then I'm going to get in the car and go there for sure. For sure.
Neil says regarding Jody Scheckter, apparently there was controversy in the 1981 Superstars competition, where during the squat thrust challenge, Jody coated his trainers in oil so they slid across the mat rather than having to lift each time.
It's just using your initiative.
There's a grey area in the rules, and we utilise that.
That's what we do as drivers.
I know. Carlos Sainz's car, his stricken Ferrari, has now been returned to the pit lane. It's shrouded in a large red tarpaulin, very loose, but it's being pushed back into the garage now. Carlos Sainz, of course, spinning out in the first lap of the race, and Alexander Albon, the other retiree for Williams, after his car went technical after a small collision.
So we have an hour and 6 minutes to go before the race has to be brought to a conclusion, and we've never actually been in this position before, I would say, almost in the history of Formula One. I want to say that, where we're just sort of waiting for this clock to tick down and then the race ends, and so therefore we don't actually know whether they will let the clock tick the whole way down, or with half an hour to go they'll say, nah, we won't be racing, or because we've not actually been in this scenario before, because the rules were changed after the Belgian Grand Prix in 2020 that got abandoned because of no rain, and now there are sort of tighter rules around what you have to do to declare a race and all of those sorts of things, and this 3-hour window was brought in. So no one's ever been in this scenario, so we don't know whether we now have to wait for an hour and 5 minutes till the race officially ends and we watch the clock down to 0 and then it ends, or with half an hour, 15 minutes to go, whatever, the FIA can declare that the race has been abandoned. So it's very, very interesting to know what's going to occur here. You must have been in some red flag periods in your day, like Le Mans. You've raced Le Mans 24 hours many times. There must have been some long red flags.
And there's been, red flags for fog or for rain. I've had a red flag at Silverstone for snow, which was interesting. But if this was a sports car race, I think it would get going sooner than if it were an F1 race, based on the fact that the wheels are covered by bodywork. Now, if the wheels were covered by bodywork, we wouldn't have as much spray. There'd still be a lot of spray, but the spray level is less than that of a single-seater. So looking forwards, is there a way so that this doesn't happen again? This is disappointing for the teams, the drivers, but more importantly, this is an entertaining sport. This is an entertainment business. We want the fans to be entertained, both at the circuit side and sitting at home as well, and to people listening on the radio. So is there a way that the teams can devise or come up with a rain body spec solution so that there is less spray coming off those rear tyres, to limit the amount of spray so that we can get these kind of races going? Is that something that we could look into?
And that's why I think a lot of the races in the 2000s, the 90s that we think of that were really wet, the Japanese fans are still having fun in the grandstands, as you can hear, but it wasn't as bad because the levels of downforce were way, way, way less, so the amount of spray was way less. So therefore, you could run races in those days that you couldn't in these days.
Lewis Hamilton says, let's get going. Give it a shot. We'll know immediately if it's drivable or not. Apparently Sector 2, according to Mario Isola from Pirelli, is the worst section with standing water at the moment. But there is definitely a feeling, isn't there, of suspense of something might actually happen. The medical car driver has got out of the car. He's gone in to the scrutineering bay, whether that's a comfort break or whether that's to just go and have a face-to-face chat with race control. I don't know, but he's linked up with race control all the time so they can communicate and keep up to speed with everything that's happening. And Joe Kenny, thank you very much for your message on hashtag BBCF1 saying, I'm listening in Belfast. How fast does the medical car go? I believe it's around 150 kilometres an hour is their kind of the speed that they like to go at. But obviously they have to vary depending on conditions as well.
Yeah, it's a very quick car, the medical car and the safety car, and I would suggest
I'd like to drive, if I'm going to be totally honest with you.
I reckon on the main straights they're getting up to 120, 130 miles an hour would be my prediction in one of those punchy Mercedes road cars.
Or Aston Martins. Or whatever
they are, with an hour and 1 minute on the clock. Cameron can't wait for the Sam Bird mullet next season.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. And Ian says, would the FIA seriously consider moving the Japanese Grand Prix to earlier in the season? Where would you see it fitting into the calendar, if so? Asks Ian in Reading. And yeah, I think if it could be moved to the sort of springtime.
Back with Australia?
No, but Australia's not too mad.
You could go from Bahrain
China.
to Japan to Australia and just continue going east.
Or I think near China seemed like a sensible option. Obviously, the Chinese Grand Prix is still it's in a bit of doubt for next year. But broadly speaking, I think it could fit in earlier in the season. It's just gone 8 o'clock in the morning here on BBC Radio 5 Live. 2 hours ago, we started the Japanese Grand Prix, round 18 of the Formula One World Championship, and there was a crash half a lap in when Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari ended up in the wall. They brought out the safety car, then the red flag, and the conditions have got worse ever since, and we're still waiting for the race to get back underway, the race that came to a halt about 2 hours ago now. There is 1 hour left on the clock. So in 1 hour's time exactly, the race will have to conclude one way or another. And that's when the clock will tick to zero. Whether there's cars on track at that point, we don't know. Sebastian Vettel is just with his Aston Martin engineers, and they're pointing at the weather radar and shaking their head, basically, not feeling particularly positive about the chances of getting the racing back underway. They have been running the medical car around, which is a very high-powered road car, in order to check the track conditions, but as of yet, no information from race control about when or if the race will get back underway. We nearly got a restart about, when was that, an hour or so ago? I think it was, no, maybe it was an hour and 15 minutes ago now, actually, that we nearly got a restart, but didn't in the end. And so everybody is just waiting around in the pit lane. Yuki Tsunoda, on occasion, going up to the pit wall to stand and wave at the grandstands. My name is Jack Nicholls. Sam Bird, the Formula E racer for Jaguar, is alongside me, and Jenny Gow.
If you do want to listen to some sport, by the way, there's plenty going on today. We don't have action at the moment for Formula One, but there's, as I said, there's plenty going on. 8:45, you've got the T20 cricket, Australia versus England. You can listen to that on Extra and on BBC Sounds. And later on today on 5 Live, we have West Ham versus Fulham, Jonathan Pearce and Glenn Murray there. And then at 4:30, Arsenal versus Liverpool. Arsenal could go top, and the race will resume, Jack Nicholls, at 16:15. We will have a race resuming. This is great news.
Well, we'll have some cars on track behind the safety car, so let's see.
I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been a long hour.
So let's see what happens then. Race will resume in 10 minutes' time. J.M. Chandler says Le Mans has never been red flagged in its history during the race itself. Did not know that. Because maybe they just cover it with full course yellows and safety cars and stuff. Which is quite interesting.
Okay. Oh no, maybe it was Spa 24 that got red flagged for me.
Spa 24's always red flagged. Right, so the drivers are now going to be making their way back to the cars. They will hop in and get ready to drive again, and they'll have been looking at these conditions and almost making mental notes of where the rivers are on the road and where the tricky parts are. And we'll go out behind the safety car, and then we'll do some laps behind the safety car, multiple laps it'll be behind the safety car, and then see whether we can get the race going again. 57 minutes to go. As it stands, no points will be awarded, and points will only be awarded if the race leader has completed more than 2 laps without the safety car or the virtual safety car being deployed. But there is now no way that Max Verstappen can win the World Championship this afternoon, because you would have to get to 75% race distance in order for it to be classed as full points, and any other if you got, even if we got to 50%, in fact 50% race distance isn't doable now, is it? So we're basically between 25 and 50%. So Verstappen, if he won, if we get between 25 and 50%, which is possible, he would get 13 points, and Leclerc would get 10 if he finished second. That's sorry, I should say
fastest lap.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, does it become half a point for fastest lap?
No.
Okay.
And I think, sorry, just to be clear, Verstappen, if it finishes like this, wouldn't win the championship. But if he won the race and Leclerc and Perez both retired, then he could still win the championship. Because if he won and scored 13 points and Leclerc and Perez both failed to finish, that would give him the point swing.
It's such a lottery. It's such a lottery to restart this race and stay on track. You're not going to be the one that chooses to go out. I mean, Carlos Sainz, we saw him having a big spin, aquaplaning, crashing out of the race. Alex Albon, we saw him having contact, and okay, they'll start behind the safety car, I'm assuming, and they won't be able to overtake, so the racing thread is gone. But Sam Bird, the conditions will still be treacherous, and you've got to keep it all 4 wheels on track.
The conditions are terrible out there, Jenny. It's going to be extremely difficult for everybody to keep the car on the circuit. Visibility will be extremely low. The best place to be is out front, which is where Max Verstappen is. Everybody else will be, it'll be like trying to drive through a waterfall all the time for 5.3 kilometers constantly.
So we will be getting racing again in 6 minutes time here on BBC Radio 5 Live. This is the Japanese Grand Prix. Max Verstappen could still win the championship in the remainder of this race, depending on how many laps we get done, and depending on what happens to Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez. Because if both of those, for example, were to crash out of the Grand Prix and Verstappen won it, then he could still wrap up the title today. It's going to be, but winning with fastest lap wouldn't be enough anymore because of the shortened race distance. Lance Stroll just getting his steering wheel affixed to the car. He will be starting in 11th place. They will all be out on the full wet weather tyres at the start or the restart of this Grand Prix, 2 hours after it initially stopped. Yuki Tsunoda, points actually go down to lower positions as well. If the race ends up being between 25 and 50% race distance, only the top 9 get points. If we go less than 25%, only the top 5 get points.
It is 8:10. Let's get the latest news updates. Matthew Bone.
Grand Prix.
Let's do it again then. Let's go racing in Suzuka. Yes, it's the Japanese Grand Prix. It's round 18 of the Formula One World Championship. And if you've waited along with us here on BBC Radio 5 Live, my thanks to you. Our reward for the waiting is that we're going to start racing in 1 minute. 1 minute and 50 seconds is on the clock. Alongside me, Sam Bird, Formula E driver for Jaguar, used to be a Mercedes reserve and test driver. And Jack Nichols, our lead commentator, is here. And Jack, I think everybody is relieved, especially our listeners, that we can finally get some action on track.
Yeah, very interesting to see what track conditions are like out there. This is the Grand Prix where Max Verstappen could still technically just about win the Formula One World Championship, but he would need to win. We'd need to get to 25% race distance. He would then need to win and hope that those around him crashed out. The skies are clearing around Suzuka. Down at the two Degners, it's a lot clearer. There's no rain, so maybe we are a bit optimistic. We've only got 49 minutes left on the clock here, but getting to 25% race distance is doable, as Carlos Sainz is not going to be taking the restart. He crashed out, which brought out the first red flag 2 hours ago that never came back in, basically. And Sainz has been watching for the remainder of the day, and he'll be watching the remainder of the race. It will be the rolling start procedure behind the safety car. So the session is going to restart in 25 seconds time, with Max Verstappen at the head of the queue, leading the Japanese Grand Prix. The revs are rising. The order is thus: Max Verstappen will be in the lead behind the safety car. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, second. Sergio Perez, third in the Red Bull. Fourth, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. Fifth, Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes. Sixth, Fernando Alonso's Alpine. Seventh, George Russell in the Mercedes. Eighth, Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren. Yuki Tsunoda, ninth for AlphaTauri, and Mick Schumacher, 10th for Haas. And then it is Stroll, Magnussen, Norris, Bottas and Latifi, the top 15. Vettel, Zhou and Gasly, the three drivers still, the 18 drivers still running. Sainz and Albon out of the race. So, rain still coming down on the start-finish straight. The fans applaud as they've been waiting for a couple of hours to see any action, and the cars are now out on circuit. Sam Bird, what do you make of the conditions in these early couple of corners?
Well, you have to remember they're probably going about 20% of race speed currently, so the amount of water coming off those rear tyres is nothing compared to when they get going and are flat out. But it does look better than when they started the race initially. Let's just hope that after a few laps under safety car, the weather conditions improve, the track gets slightly better, and then we can go racing.
So just to clarify, if 25% of this race will be when they take their 14th lap, so it's 13 and a quarter laps. So when they get to 14 laps, then we're dishing out 25. That's 25%, so we can dish out points.
Here's Hamilton's radio.
Track's pretty good.
Okay, copy.
Hamilton saying the track's pretty good. So that's positive. And they didn't actually say that there would be more than one lap behind the safety car on this time through. So we'll see whether I'd be amazed if they just bring the safety car straight in, but we'll wait and see. The lights are still flashing on the safety car as Verstappen comes through the right-hander up towards Spoon Curve, and he is followed by Charles Leclerc with Sergio Perez in third position. Fourth is Ocon, fifth is Hamilton. Here's Ocon's radio.
Visibility is better so far.
Copy that.
Ocon saying the visibility is better, but as you say, Sam, the faster the cars go, the worse the visibility gets, and behind the safety car you're going a bit slower, but they all seem quite positive on the radio.
They all seem quite positive. I think what will happen is the safety car will complete this lap. We will then do the majority of a second lap, and then my feeling is then we're going to get some racing going. It seems like the drivers are reporting some positive news. It's the right thing to do effectively 2 laps on safety car, so you get a full sighter a couple of times of the circuit. But yeah, I think we're ready to get things going. Fingers crossed.
You heard the revs rise there from Verstappen.
And track conditions when you can?
It's not too bad for now.
Our conditions.
They're getting better, I think.
That was Charles Leclerc and then Sergio Perez giving their feedback. Still pretty tough visibility-wise coming down towards the first couple of corners. The sun sets in an hour, and there's 45 minutes left on the clock, so still a lot of question marks about what's going to happen in this Japanese Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live, but there are cars circulating for the first time in 2 hours. The sound you can hear is Sergio Perez, who's running in 3rd place. Hamilton in 5th position, got overtaken by Fernando Alonso on the opening lap of the race, but then managed to get Alonso back again as he cut back underneath him coming out of the hairpin. As they come now through the S's, still behind the safety car. And we'll wait and see when the safety car decides to come in, or when the FIA decide to bring the safety car in. And they're all trying to get up as much speed as possible to really test out the conditions.
Fascinating. Lewis Hamilton has been on the radio, just listened across, and he's saying that he doesn't think it's far away from the intermediate tyres. So at the moment, everyone behind the safety car on wets, that's what they have to be. But he thinks that the track's almost good enough for that intermediate tyre.
Yeah, the intermediate is a slightly less extreme version of the wet. It's still a wet tyre. It's not slick and smooth, but it's a little bit more like a road car tyre, except obviously a lot more high tech. And Max Verstappen still leading the way behind the safety car, but the safety car, here's Valtteri Bottas's radio.
Still visibility is too poor now when there's some cars ahead.
And that's the thing, Bottas running in the middle of the pack is saying the visibility is quite poor.
And that's coming from a Scandinavian, so it must be bad, Jack. It must be terrible. You know, Valtteri Bottas is a very competent driver in the wet. Going about the tyres that they use in the wet, you've got the extreme wet and you've got the intermediate. The window for use of the extreme wet, I think, is very debatable and needs to be analysed by the FIA and by Formula One organisers, because it's not a usable tyre. Max Verstappen?
I think it's raining a bit more now again, is it? Not clear on the...
Max Verstappen reporting that he thinks it's raining a little bit more now, Jack.
Well, the safety car is still out and staying out as he comes around the final corner, so there is no safety car coming in just yet, and none of these laps are if the race were to end now and they still didn't restart the Grand Prix, then still no one would score any points because there hadn't been any laps yet without the safety car.
Lewis Hamilton's now changed his mind. He said, no, actually, we still need to be on the extreme. So that's the full wet tyre, which is what they're running around on now. Ricardo?
Other drivers have complained about visibility. How's visibility?
Yeah, that's at the moment, that's actually the bigger issue. I think track conditions are not too bad in most places.
So that's what we were talking about, is that the track conditions are okay, but it's the visibility and the spray that comes up from the cars that is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton went on to say we're driving at too slow a speed at the moment to clear away the water. He said when we get going, it'll clear up a bit. So Lewis always likes to give a lot of feedback on his radio. He's talking to his engineers all the time about the conditions, what it feels like, his tyres. I mean, famously we hear about his tyres all the time, but
Lewis is superb in the wet conditions as well, and he really looked good on Friday in the super wet conditions. So of course he wants this to get going. Remember, this is a guy that hasn't won a race this year. He's the most successful driver in Formula One. Safety car will enter pits. Rolling start procedure, Jack. We're going racing.
Okay, racing about to get underway. The lights are off on the safety car and the race will begin. Probably still a minute or so away from it. Verstappen backing off to give himself the chance to get up to speed, and everybody in the middle of the pack is going to have to be trying to keep as close as possible when the racing gets back underway. Verstappen coming up towards Spoon Curve now. So the FIA deeming that it is safe enough to go racing out there. Some mixed reports from drivers. The track conditions okay, but the visibility poor as the safety car heads off, leaving Verstappen in the lead of the Grand Prix, with Charles Leclerc in second place, Sergio Perez in third, Esteban Ocon is fourth. Here's Verstappen's radio.
Yeah, it will be soon enters, but the problem is the field is still bunched up. You know, when you pit now, it's a bit of a disaster, I think.
So that's Verstappen saying it'll soon be ready for the intermediate tyres, but if he pits, he'll come out in the middle of all of the traffic. So it's going to be really fascinating to see what unfolds. We've got 40 minutes left in the Japanese Grand Prix. It's going to be a 40-minute long race, hopefully. And Max Verstappen is about to lead them away. How aggressive is Charles Leclerc going to be? The chances of Verstappen winning the title here today are now quite slim, but it's still possible. But he needs Leclerc and Perez to run into trouble. Max Verstappen gets on the power, out of the final corner, and the race begins in Japan. Verstappen across the line, in the lead. Second is Charles Leclerc. Third is Sergio Perez, who didn't get a very good restart, and on the run down towards the first corner, might be under a little bit of pressure. Huge amounts of spray coming off the back of the cars as they swing into turn one. Perez still there in third. It's still Ocon in fourth, with Hamilton fifth, and Alonso in sixth position. Through the right-hander of turns 1 and 2. Everybody makes it through safely. Into the pits straight away has come Sebastian Vettel for intermediate tyres. So, bit of a gamble for him and for Nicholas Latifi, and that might be an unsafe release for the Aston Martin team, which will be very disappointing if it turns out that gamble pays off. Gets on the power coming out of the pit lane. They're still wheel to wheel coming down to turn 1, and Vettel is ahead of Latifi. So those are the two drivers that have taken the gamble, got onto the intermediate tyres as opposed to the full wets, and we'll see how that works out for them. Kevin Magnussen gets ahead of Lance Stroll. He's up into 11th place now. Tsunoda still running in 9th place. Hamilton still running in 5th. Verstappen and Leclerc very close up at the front of the field. There's just about a second between them. There'll be no DRS in these conditions either, as Verstappen turns left into Spoon Curve, with Leclerc continuing to chase him down in the Ferrari. 38.5 minutes to go, and Max Verstappen is out in front. And at the moment, pulling away, the top two are from Sergio Perez in third. Fourth is still Ocon. Fifth is still Lewis Hamilton. As they come through the spray, the visibility is... it's still quite tough out there, I think, when you're further back in the pack. I can't believe how much spray there's coming. I think it's super tough, especially from the back of Charles Leclerc and towards Sergio Perez. Everybody from third backwards is having an extremely tough time, especially at the beginning of the lap, and to start the lap down the front straight is very, very treacherous right now. Visibility is 0. 8:25 here on BBC Radio 5 Live. This is the Japanese Grand Prix, the remarkably delayed Japanese Grand Prix, and that is the reason that we're still with you at the moment, because we've got 37.5 minutes left on the clock, and Max Verstappen is leading the way. We're getting another pit stopper for intermediate tyres. That is Valtteri Bottas. The Vettel-Latifi unsafe release is under investigation. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, pit lane was starting to get a little bit busy, so you got Lando Norris has also come in, and it's taking about 3.5 seconds for them to do a pit stop in these conditions. It always takes a little bit longer in the rain when it's a wet pit lane as well, so about 25 seconds in total to come in, change tyres and get back out again.
And I tell you what, Latifi set the fastest final sector of anyone. Here's Hamilton's radio.
Big streams right now, mate. Copy.
Yeah, just about to let you know that they're losing time on the Inter.
Okay, so Hamilton being told that those who change to the intermediate tyres are losing time, but now Vettel sets the fastest first sector of anybody. So they're starting to find a bit of time now, those who came out on the intermediate tyre.
They've gone a little early. The crossover point on Friday was a 1:48 round there. At the moment, they're doing a 1:50, but they're preempting and trying to get a little bit ahead of everyone. That's why you've seen the ones coming in who are trailing at the end of this pack.
They're also full of fuel, Jenny, which they wouldn't have been potentially in free practice session.
So Sebastian Vettel sets the fastest first sector of the race so far. Here's George Russell's radio.
Inters are much quicker, much quicker.
You have the gap to Lewis.
Yeah, because they've got clear track.
Verstappen pits and Leclerc pits. The top two come in for intermediate tyres. Is everybody going to dive into the pit lane at this point? It looks like they may well do. So into the pits comes Max Verstappen.
Yeah, they're double stacking the cars as well. I think I saw Perez coming in, so they'll take Verstappen first, lift him up, they'll put on the inter tyres. A very relatively slick, I think there was a delay on the rear right, and then in comes Perez as well. They're bringing in Russell, I think that was Hamilton comes in. Everybody's coming in now for inters. They're double stacking everybody. It's not worked out for Mercedes too well. They're having to hold on Russell while he comes into the pit lane as well, so that'll be slightly delayed.
So Alonso, Ricciardo and Schumacher have all stayed out on the full wet weather tyres. So maybe they feel they can do one more lap at a reasonable speed and come out ahead still. Here, the order is going to all completely shake up here. So Verstappen is still out in front. Leclerc and Perez and Ocon and Hamilton are all in the same order. But Vettel is now behind Lewis Hamilton on circuit. So Sebastian Vettel has jumped a long way up the order. He's got ahead of George Russell. So has Latifi. So has Norris. Tsunoda's got ahead of Russell as well, because Russell had to slow down in that double stack pit stop. So he lost a lot of time there, Russell.
That was the worst decision we've made.
And he's not happy with the decision. Fernando Alonso leads the race for the Alpine team. The question is, how quickly is he going compared to those around him? Because if he can do one reasonable lap on the full wets while everybody else is getting up to speed on the intermediates, he's got a shot at making a bit of ground here. Here's Mick Schumacher's radio.
So Mick, we're P3. Lots of other people have gone on to the other tyre, but we're hoping for the safety car here. We're hoping for the safety car. So stay on track and keep going.
So let's see what Alonso, Ricciardo and Schumacher decide to do. They are taking a gamble, and actually Alonso is coming through the final corner now. Does he stay out on circuit, or does he come into the pit lane, Fernando Alonso? Around the final corner, Alonso pits. So Alonso does come into the pit lane, and I don't think it's going to be a huge amount of time gained. It was the gamble out there, but I don't think it's going to work out for Fernando Alonso. Here comes Max Verstappen now to the inside of Mick Schumacher, and Verstappen is back in the lead of the race. So he's made his pit stop, and he has retaken the lead of the Grand Prix, and he's 3 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc, who's in third. Mick Schumacher is still in second place. Zhou is in fourth position at the moment, with Perez in fifth, Ocon in sixth. But Schumacher and Zhou are the two drivers who are yet to make a pit stop. Alonso has come out down in ninth position, so it was the wrong call to stay out for an extra lap on those wet tyres. Sebastian Vettel is now up into eighth place, so that really worked out for him.
Really worked out for Sebastian Vettel, getting that early call in to change the inters. On the flip side, Fernando Alonso missing out yet again. More points lost for Fernando Alonso in the 2022 championship.
Was there another unsafe release here in the other Aston Martin? I think there might have been. So both Aston Martins might be under investigation for an unsafe release here. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc is going past Mick Schumacher. So Leclerc is back up into second position now, having changed to the intermediate tyres with 32 minutes to go in the Japanese Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Schumacher is third in the Haas, but is struggling for speed at the moment. Here's Latifi's radio.
Is it raining harder? Getting aquaplaning a bit now?
Negative. Latifi asking if it's raining harder because he's getting a bit of aquaplaning. The team saying, nope, don't think so.
So Charles Leclerc got massively held up by Mick Schumacher there. He was 1.6 seconds behind Verstappen. Now he finds himself 5 seconds behind. So the 2 sectors behind Mick Schumacher's really cost him.
And Verstappen is flying as well. He sets the fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 45.148. At the moment, Verstappen wouldn't win the championship, even though he has the race lead and the fastest lap. But because we're not going to get to 75% race distance, that wouldn't be enough to give Max Verstappen the title in Suzuka this afternoon, almost evening. It's 4:30 now in Japan. Schumacher still staying out there. This is... They're committing to this gamble, but nothing is quite working out yet. We've got 31.5 minutes to go. Max Verstappen leading, Leclerc second. Sergio Perez is trying to get ahead of Mick Schumacher in the fight for third place, and he's got him now. So Perez gets ahead of Schumacher, coming through the S's and into Dunlop, and he is now ahead. So Schumacher's next challenge will come from Esteban Ocon, who's running in fifth place. Zhou and the Alfa Romeo team have pitted. They were out there gambling, but have decided that ultimately this isn't going to work out for them. George Russell is down in 12th position after that double stack Mercedes pit stop that cost him a lot of time. Leclerc 0.3 quicker than Verstappen through the first sector. He's 4 seconds back from him, but he is going a little quicker at the moment. 31 minutes on the clock. Here comes Ocon to try and pass Mick Schumacher, coming up into Spoon Curve. Goes to the inside, he's not quite close enough, and this could be an opportunity for Hamilton to try and get past Ocon, while Ocon is trying to get past Schumacher. And the sound you can hear is Lewis Hamilton coming up behind the Haas car. Ocon gets ahead of Schumacher. Hamilton goes to the outside, coming into 130R. But actually, Schumacher has more straight line speed than Hamilton, and he's not quite able to do anything about it. Through the left-hander they come. Ocon is up into 4th place, Schumacher 5th, Hamilton still in 6th, Sandberg.
If you ever needed a visual of just why Lewis Hamilton and George Russell have struggled so much this year, it was that Lewis Hamilton could not outdrag the Haas. And the Haas should have been slow in a straight line because it's got a different tread pattern. It's got the full extreme wet tyre on compared to Lewis Hamilton. Just goes to show how challenging it is for Mercedes right now with that draggy car.
So the top 5 on the road are as they run, which is Max Verstappen in the lead, Leclerc 2nd, Perez 3rd, Ocon 4th, Hamilton 5th. That is the legitimate order. Mick Schumacher in 6th place is still trying to hang on in there with those full wet tyres, but the intermediates are the way to go at the moment, and he's falling back. 8th is Fernando Alonso. 7th is Sebastian Vettel. 8th is Alonso. 9th is Nicholas Latifi, who's just ahead of Lando Norris, who's in 10th position. And then it's Tsunoda, Russell, Stroll, Ricciardo, Magnussen, the top 15. Bottas, Gasly and Zhou, the 18 drivers. We'll be with you for the rest of this race here on BBC Radio 5 Live. The 18th round of the World Championship. And as it stands, Max Verstappen will not win the championship in Suzuka today. And Fernando Alonso getting good drive off the hairpin and breezing past Mick Schumacher. Schumacher is really starting to struggle compared to those on intermediates. Nicholas Latifi is almost up to 8th place in the Williams. The driver who won't be carrying on with the team next year and has had a very difficult year. He's now up into 8th place, which I think would be a career best result if he can hang on. Schumacher is slithering wide and is now going to lose out to Lando Norris as well in the McLaren. So Schumacher's gamble now feels like it hasn't paid off, and it's probably about time to pit him.
Absolutely. I feel a bit for Mick because actually he started this restarted race up in 10th place. Now, everybody started on the same extreme wet tyre. Daniel Ricciardo?
The weather's stable.
Yeah, we're expecting stable conditions to the end of the race.
Stable conditions to the end of the race.
Yeah, this was Mick's chance to showcase to Haas what he's got, what he's made of, and a bold move by the team has really cost him. He's not going to finish anywhere near the front of the field now in this race. He'll likely finish towards the back, and it's a shame because when you've got an opportunity to showcase what you can do and your drive is on the line, that's not the kind of call that you want.
7th place in Hungary last year is Nicholas Latifi's best F1 result, so this 8th place wouldn't beat that, but we've still got 27 minutes and 37 seconds left on the clock. Verstappen's lead is up now to 5 seconds over Charles Leclerc, so even though Leclerc has the fastest lap of the race, Verstappen was 4 tenths quicker on that previous lap. The man on the attack most is Lewis Hamilton, running in 5th place, trying to get ahead of Esteban Ocon, and he's less than a second behind the Alpine driver. And that sound you can hear now is the Mercedes of Hamilton, coming around Spoon Curve and then getting back on the power and heading down towards 130R, up through the gears, up into 7th gear, up into 8th gear. Still in these wet, treacherous conditions, Hamilton's hitting 180 miles an hour before turning into the left-hander. Really, really quick speeds with less than 27 minutes on the clock. Verstappen's lead goes up to 6 seconds now. So Verstappen was 1.2 seconds quicker than Leclerc on that last lap alone.
Lewis is already moving around in a straight line to try and find a slightly damper area of the circuit. Clearly those intermediates are starting to overheat.
Yeah, we were told before this race started that the intermediates grain very quickly. Sam will tell you a bit more about what graining is if you're that interested, but they start graining, and once they start graining, they're not as useful anymore, and we're expecting people to maybe have to come in for 2-3 pit stops for the full-length race. So we're going to have to watch how long these tyres will actually last out there, and if we'll see another round of pit stops.
George Russell complaining. Why am I struggling to say George Russell? George Russell. It's like a slip of the tongue. George Russell complaining that the brakes are the same as Singapore quali. If you guys can cast your mind back to that, he struggled with front locking in Singapore quali and went off a couple of times.
Hamilton still chasing down Esteban Ocon in the fight over 4th position. The top 3 remain Verstappen, Leclerc Perez. Verstappen is absolutely flying. He's 6/10 quicker than Leclerc in the first third of the lap alone. Yuki Tsunoda is under pressure for 10th place from George Russell behind in the Mercedes. It's a second in the middle sector for Verstappen, his advantage over Leclerc. He's absolutely flying out there, Max Verstappen. Remarkable stuff. 25 minutes plus 1 lap to go. And Verstappen, even though he's leading the Grand Prix, as it stands, would not win the championship because Leclerc is lying in 2nd position at the moment, and Perez is 3rd also. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, for Verstappen to win, he'd need to extend his lead over Charles Leclerc by 8 points. As things stand, he would, I believe, collect 5 points if the race gets to half distance, which is what I'm predicting. He'd collect, it wouldn't be enough to put him over that line, especially if Leclerc can hold on to that fastest lap. Conditions changing all the time. If it were to start raining again, no one's going to be able to get faster than Leclerc. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on those rain clouds and see if anyone else can grab that fastest lap.
24 minutes and 25 seconds to go. Into turns 1 and 2 they come. Hamilton is still chasing down Esteban Ocon for 4th place, and George Russell is still chasing down Yuki Tsunoda for 10th.
So others starting to struggle with the fronts too.
It's Hamilton being told others are starting to struggle with the fronts as well. And so that's the challenging part now, isn't it? You've got to try and keep these tyres alive. 1.4 seconds was the margin Verstappen pulled out on Leclerc on that last lap. He's on a mission here, Max Verstappen, driving absolutely superbly. And now he's 8.5 seconds clear of Leclerc. That visibility isn't an issue for Leclerc. He's not going to be getting much spray from Verstappen, so that is just raw pace that Verstappen has at the moment out in front.
Well, the top sort of 5 or 6 are very spread out, except the battle between Ocon and Hamilton. There seems to be big gaps appearing everywhere at the moment. Everybody struggle for front-end grip due to the fact that the fronts are working above their operating temperature window and they're starting to grain. When a tyre grains, basically the rubber folds over and you're not running on the full rubber of the tyre.
And we are expecting some spots in around 2 minutes.
Leclerc being told we're expecting some spots of rain in about 2 minutes, but some spots makes it sound like they're not expecting a huge downpour. Hamilton, like 0.3 of a second behind Esteban Ocon as they swing into the first 2 corners once again. Less than 23 minutes to go. Hamilton still fighting Ocon over 4th place. Is Perez caught Leclerc on that last lap by a second. So Sergio Perez could be coming into this fight a little bit. He's 6 seconds back from Leclerc, and we've only got 22 minutes to go, but Leclerc seems to be really, really struggling to keep the pace up. Ocon in 4th position, Hamilton 5th, Vettel running well in 6th position, only just ahead of Fernando Alonso, so that's another close fight. Then it's Latifi in 8th, and there goes Russell attacking Tsunoda and getting Yuki Tsunoda around the outside on the exit of turn 1. No, it was through the S's. Final part of the S's. Russell manages to get up into 10th place. Tsunoda drops down into 11th. 22 minutes to go.
So 50% of this race would be 27 laps. That's when more points are given out for everybody. And just listening across to the radio, Lewis Hamilton being told that others are starting to struggle with their tyres as well. So maybe tyres starting to drop off and lose a little performance out there for some.
Well, they're lapping 4 seconds slower than they were at the start of the restart when they put the intermediates on.
That was a nice move.
Russell pleased with his overtake. Reminds me of Eddie Irvine around the outside of David Coulthard at the start of the race in '97.
I personally don't remember that one, Jack. You do. Everybody's got to hang on to these tyres now. There's only 21 minutes remaining of this race. The Ferrari, interestingly, is a car that is extremely quick, but it's not as kind on its tyre as the Red Bull. We see it in the dry. We're now seeing it in the wet as well. Sergio Perez is coming towards Charles Leclerc now at a rate of knots. The gap now below 5 seconds, Jack. It's going to get interesting to see over the next 5 or 6 laps. Sergio Perez is going to cruise up to the back of Leclerc, and that has quite significant impact on not only the outright driver's title. Max Verstappen's going to win it anyway, but Sergio Perez could get closer to Charles Leclerc in second?
How many positions we lose if we box?
We'll lose 5 positions. We'll drop behind Alonso. Gap to
3 positions.
5 positions.
Leclerc wanting to pit. I mean, that last lap, again, he was a second and a half slower than Max Verstappen. But if you come out on fresher tyres, but they've only done, what, 10 laps on these tyres, pretty much? So, I mean, it'll then do another 10 to the end of the race, I guess, and he'd be going much quicker. But for how much longer would he be going quicker? Because he fell off the pace quite quickly on these tyres. Very interesting stuff at Ferrari. George Russell has got ahead of Lando Norris and up into 9th place. Hamilton is very close to the back of Esteban Ocon. Less than 20 minutes to go.
If they complete half distance of this, but not 75%, which is where we're looking and predicting for them to go, and if Leclerc pitted, he'd come out in 8th place, they reckon. That would be 3 points compared to a possible 19 for Verstappen. He'd get an extra point for current fastest lap, but it means that the championship would be Verstappen's.
But that would also mean him not overtaking anybody, whereas I think he would if he had fresh tyres. So I still think the championship is definitely going down to Austin, but certainly Charles Leclerc is in a bit of a pickle right now with his Ferrari and those intermediate tyres.
And also Perez would finish second. Would that have any implication?
By Perez finishing second, he would pick up 14 points, opposed to 19 for Max. So the difference of that is 5. So it would go on. Oh, my brain hurts so much. You're getting me to do live mathematics. Andrew Benson will be hopping up and down.
Perez would then be Max Verstappen's closest rival.
Yeah.
Because he would overtake Charles Leclerc in the World Championship.
18 and a half minutes to go. Max Verstappen leading. As it stands, he will not win the World Championship in Japan. Very good drive for Lewis Hamilton coming out of the hairpin. He's trying his best to try and pull alongside the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. They're fighting over 4th position. There's just 0.3 of a second between them, and Hamilton has been relentless in chasing Ocon down. George Russell's next target is going to be to get ahead of Nicholas Latifi through the spoon curve. Again, Hamilton gets good drive, and this is the closest he's been to the back of Ocon for a while. He's right in the slipstream of the Alpine, but that suddenly turns into spray as they come down towards 130R. Ocon covers the inside, keeps the position for the moment. Hamilton can't follow closely enough through the very quick left-hander at 130R in order to make the move. He's going to get good drive here out of the chicane. Gets on the power. Ocon still holding that 4th place. Hamilton coming out of the final corner and across the line. He's still just a little too far back. And Alonso is still fighting with Sebastian Vettel. He was really close to getting him for 6th place earlier on. 17 minutes and 25 seconds to go. Verstappen's lead is now 12.5 seconds over Leclerc. Perez is 4 seconds back from Leclerc now. It was 6 seconds at one point, but he's only taking 0.4 of a second out of him per lap. So it's not a huge amount of time that he's losing at the moment. 17 minutes and 0 seconds remain.
You know what it reminds me of? Watching Max Verstappen just pull away relentlessly in all of these races. It's like when you go to the local kart track and somebody clearly has a much better rental go-kart than everybody else and disappears into the distance. Remember, this is a World Championship, guys.
And Ocon is making noises about pitting.
Yeah, let's make sure we undercut him, yeah.
Copy.
So Hamilton's saying, let's make sure we undercut Ocon, i.e. we come into the pits before Ocon does, put on a nice new set of tyres and jump up the order. Leclerc maybe is under a bit of threat from that from Sergio Perez as well, because the undercut in these conditions, in a dry race, if you came in, put on a new set of tyres, did a quick lap before the other guy puts on his new tyres, you could maybe gain a couple of seconds or so. Here, you could gain 4 or 5 seconds potentially. The undercut will be so powerful in these damp conditions. Here we come down towards the final couple of corners with the Alpine ahead of the Mercedes, Ocon ahead of Hamilton. Do either of them come into the pits this time around through the final corner? No. Both stay out for the time being. The same is true of Sebastian Vettel in 6th place and Fernando Alonso in 7th position. So some great fights going on out there. but not for the lead, because Max Verstappen is disappearing up at the front. 13.5 seconds now ahead of Charles Leclerc. Absolutely dominant stuff from Verstappen, but as it stands, he won't win the World Championship in this race in Japan. Perez third, Ocon fourth, Hamilton fifth, Vettel, Alonso, Latifi, Russell and Norris. 15 minutes to go in the Japanese Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Myself, Jack Nicholls, along with Jenny Gao and the Jaguar Formula E driver Sam Bird, and we've just got 15 minutes for Verstappen to hold on, and Perez chips away again down to 3.7 seconds. Into the pits comes Joe. So they were last to pit last time, they're now first to pit this time, so we'll see how that works out. This is a very tricky moment currently, isn't it, Sam, whether to pit or not in these conditions, because Hamilton, for example, is losing so much time behind Ocon.
Absolutely. If I were Perez, Hamilton and Alonso, I would get the pit stop done now, knowing that the others will have to pit. They will have a bad couple of laps while on these used, grained intermediate tyres as Lewis Hamilton gets very close to the back of Ocon, Jack.
Here they come down towards 130R again. Hamilton goes to the outside, but he's out of the slipstream. Coming into the very quick left-hander, approaches at 180 miles an hour, has to back out of the throttle, gets back on the throttle so quickly, Hamilton, and then looks to send the lunge. But Ocon covers it off. This is the closest Hamilton's been in the fight for fourth place. Can't quite get the drive coming out of the chicane. He might have a chance coming into turn one. Again, tucked underneath the slipstream of the Alpine driver. Ocon comes towards the middle of the road, and Hamilton doesn't quite have the overspeed. We've seen so often this season the Alpine is really quick in a straight line. The Renault engine in the back of it, very powerful indeed, and Hamilton just can't do anything about getting that fourth place just yet. Still, only Joe has pitted.
Yeah, if you're going to pit, you're going to have to do it soon, because we're actually running out of time in this race. There's only 13 minutes to go, so if you are to pit, you're going to lose 25 seconds. You've got to have enough laps and enough physical time left in the race in order to make that time back up and then hopefully gain time on your competitors as well and overtake.
We've got 13 minutes left on the clock in this Japanese Grand Prix. Stroll has pitted now as well, so he came in from 12th place to pit, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Hamilton again right behind the Alpine. George Russell's an interesting one. He can't quite get past Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. He was 9/10 of a second quicker on that last lap, so the gap's down to half a second, and actually he's just got him. So Russell has just got him on this lap and is now up into 8th place. He's trying to recover after Mercedes brought him in at the same time, and Hamilton's got the switch back here. No, not quite. Thought he was going to get the inside line on Ocon as they come towards 130R again. It's almost a carbon copy of the last lap. Ocon has a bit more of an advantage and is a little further ahead, and as a result Hamilton couldn't quite get the power on as quickly as he did last time, so he's not as close. Ocon goes in a little bit deep into the chicane, but he keeps that fourth position. This is good defensive work from Esteban Ocon, driving very nicely to keep Lewis Hamilton behind as they come down the start-finish straight with 12 minutes to go. Verstappen leading, and as it stands, he would not win the championship today in Japan. Verstappen leading, Leclerc second, Perez third, Ocon fourth, Hamilton fifth. Vettel, Alonso, Russell, Latifi and Norris are the top 10. So Yuki Tsunoda has dropped out of the top 10 positions, and he has gained 2 places from where he started, but was in 9th earlier on today. And George Russell, I think has he pulled the same move again on Nicholas Latifi around the outside? Yes, he has. So the same move that he pulled on Norris, I think it was, is the move that he's now pulled on Nicholas Latifi. Very nice stuff from George Russell. He likes that one. Tsunoda has pitted from 11th place. So AlphaTauri going for a bit of a gamble. 2.5 seconds pit stop, nice and tidy. Still the fight going on with Ocon and Hamilton, and Perez is now just 2.6 seconds back from Charles Leclerc. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, Zhou Guanyu has just stolen fastest lap away from Charles Leclerc, so that's 1 point away from Leclerc if he can't get it back, and if he doesn't pit, it's unlikely he'll get it back, and that means that the fastest lap actually the point wouldn't be paid out. You have to finish in the top 10 to get that point.
But it shows you how much quicker the intermediate tyres are right now.
Absolutely, but the gamble now for the people that want to come in now, Jack, like I said, there's only 10 minutes remaining.
Are you sleeping? You're just in the groove. Clear limit.
So Sergio Perez asking his race engineer if he's sleeping, and the race engineer is saying, well, nothing to say to you, mate. You're doing a great job. Reel him in. 2 seconds between them now. Here comes Hamilton. He's a little too far back from Ocon this time to make a move. The gap is half a second as they come across the line. George Russell sets his personal best lap of the Grand Prix. No one else has... So Tsunoda came out in 16th place. He's 6 seconds off the back of the pack, and it just depends, with 10 minutes to go now, whether anyone else decides to pit. I think it's too late to pit now, isn't it? If you're up at the front.
I think so. I think you're just going to have to slither around as Lewis Hamilton goes for the same move as George Russell, but Esteban Ocon wise to it. He's driving the widest Formula One car in Japan right now.
Yeah, very strong stuff from Ocon, holding on to this 4th place. His 8th in the championship, hasn't had a podium finish this year, and in fact 4th would be his best result of the season so far. Hamilton's got good drive coming off the hairpin, and Ocon has a little bit of a wiggle. Hamilton sticks it to the outside. That's going to be a brave one to keep it all the way around, but he's not going to be able to because Ocon's got the shorter line on the inside, splashing through the puddles as they come into Spoon Curve at the far end of the circuit, the furthest point away from the pit lane and paddock complex at Suzuka. And Hamilton again gets a good drive out of Spoon and is right behind Ocon, but nothing he can do just yet. Verstappen comes across the line, and it's now just 1.3 seconds between Leclerc in second and Perez in third. Less than 9 minutes to go in the Japanese Grand Prix, and Perez is right with Leclerc now through the chicane.
I think everybody's staying out now, Jack. Nobody at the front is going to pit because you simply don't have the time. Esteban Ocon is putting his car in all the right places, but Lewis Hamilton just doesn't have the straight line power. And the car is quite a draggy car this year's Mercedes in order to get past him, even when he's got better traction.
Alonso pits from 7th place. Fernando Alonso into the pit lane in the other Alpine. Now, that is a very surprising decision, considering how little of the race we have remaining.
He had a big gap to Russell in front. He had an even bigger gap to Nicholas Latifi behind. I think he thinks that he can regain those 2 positions given the gap of 15 seconds he had to Latifi.
In 8 minutes?
And take fastest lap.
There
Another
we go.
point.
Yeah, but in 8 minutes he's got to gain, what, about 7 seconds
I think he can do that. I think 7 seconds is doable, but you lose 25 seconds obviously for a pit stop, so it was worth the gamble, I think, for Alonso. Definitely not worth it if your name is Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez or Ocon.
So Perez chasing down Leclerc. There's 0.7 of a second between them as they flash left through 130R and then stamp onto the brakes into the chicane. Leclerc has been really struggling with his tyres as the race has progressed, and Sergio Perez has reeled him in, and now it's going to be a fascinating fight between Leclerc in second and Perez in third. Max Verstappen is 19 seconds clear in the lead of the Grand Prix. We've got 6 minutes and 49 seconds on the clock. Stroll has got ahead of Valtteri Bottas. What is Tsunoda up to? He's caught the back of Mick Schumacher fairly quickly, but I think they were all everyone who pitted was trying to do an undercut, but then no one else pitted, so they just ended up pitting for no reason. Alonso's already got Norris. He caught him, he's within him instantly. He was 3 seconds back when he left the pit lane.
So points as it stands right now, it would be 360 for Verstappen, who's leading the way. If Leclerc manages to finish in second place, he'd be on 251, 247 for Perez. If they switch round, Perez taking Leclerc, it would be 249 for both of them. That's a gap of 111 points. So the only way Verstappen could win is if he gets that fastest lap. He'd have to come in and pit the interval 20 seconds.
Yeah, and he's actually not too far away from getting that.
It's really on the line now, guys. Max Verstappen if Sergio Perez can overtake Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen's got a good shot of coming in, still leading the race and then setting the fastest lap.
Alonso's got Latifi now. So in 2 minutes, he gained 7 seconds and got Nicholas Latifi. Is he going to be able to catch Russell and Vettel here as well, Fernando Alonso? He's absolutely flying out there. 5.5 minutes to go. He's setting the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far. Hamilton's getting on the power coming out of Spoon Curve, trying to catch Esteban Ocon still. Leclerc holding on to that second position. 5 minutes and 15 seconds on the clock. Very, very close stuff. As they come down the hill, across the line, Perez still chasing Charles Leclerc.
Pit stop about 25 seconds. The gap between Verstappen and Leclerc currently at 21 seconds. 5 minutes to go.
Into the turns 1 and 2 they come. I think the other thing is, it's not exactly a guarantee if you pit Verstappen and put him on intermediates that he'll get fastest lap. Not in the same way that it is in dry conditions, because you're just about to have Alonso.
You're saying that about a guy that's 21 seconds in the lead of the race, Jack. I'm saying that it's almost a certainty that if Max Verstappen comes in for new tyres, that man would be setting the fastest lap. He's been on a different level again this afternoon.
But it's not worth the risk, surely.
But it could be a championship winning moment. He could get it done today if he does that. And if Perez, but it all depends on if Perez can get this move done. And he looks down the inside. Can he get the drive off the corner? No, Charles Leclerc just about hangs on.
I think Leclerc's taken the high line at the hairpin on purpose. He did it on the last lap as well. So I think he reckons there's more grip out there around the outside and off the racing line. Less than 4 minutes to go now. Verstappen's lead over Leclerc is 22.3 seconds. Verstappen was 2.5 seconds quicker than Leclerc on that last lap. Ocon running 4th, Hamilton 5th, Vettel, Russell, Alonso, Latifi and Norris the top 10 at the moment, with Ricciardo in 11th, Stroll in 12th, Magnussen 13th, Tsunoda and Bottas the top 15, Joe, Gasly and Schumacher, the 18 drivers, still running through the chicane. Come second and third place men as they then drop down the hill.
So if Max Verstappen were to pit, it would need to be at the end of this lap, because otherwise he won't be able to do a full, complete racing lap, I believe.
They're not going to pit him, surely.
No, I'm just saying, if it's going to happen, it needs to be this lap. It didn't look like the Red Bull pit lane were very busy, but imagine that, if Sergio Perez can get this done on Charles Leclerc, and if Max Verstappen were to pit, get the fastest lap, can you imagine?
And I think we are going to hit 50% race distance here as well. Here's Verstappen's radio.
We're not going to box for new tyres?
Not at the moment.
No,
there exactly. We go. Okay. Austin it is.
We're going to hit half race distance as well for what it's worth. We anticipated we would, but we're now on lap 26 of 53. So end of the next lap we'll have hit half race distance. As again, Leclerc goes sort of high and wide at the hairpin. Perez sticks to the tighter inside line. They're still fighting over second place. Hamilton is just 3 tenths back from Esteban Ocon as they come into the hairpin, and a very similar thing happens where Hamilton takes the tighter line, but Ocon is on the power sooner as he goes high. 2 minutes to go in the Japanese Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live as they come charging now down towards 130R again. Leclerc trying to get some more moisture on his tyres, basically, because they are struggling in these temperatures. 2 minutes plus 1 lap to go. Oh, this is going to be tight, isn't it, for Perez to get Leclerc? There's no way. Whoa, big moment for Leclerc. Huge snap of oversteer as he gets on the power. But he kind of didn't seem to lose a huge amount of ground. But Perez is closing as they come down towards turn 1. Not close enough. That was a big one for Leclerc. His rear tyres don't look in good shape, do they?
No, they look really, really old and second-hand now. Sergio Perez cranking up the pressure on the back of Charles Leclerc.
The first sporting event of the day has got underway here in the Japanese Grand Prix. We've still got 2 Premier League commentaries to come for you later on this afternoon when 5 Live Sport gets underway at midday. perhaps the biggest one being Arsenal versus Liverpool in the Premier League. Arsenal can go back to the top of the Premier League with a victory this afternoon, and we'll bring you full commentary from the Emirates. We've just got 35 seconds plus a lap to go. This is going to be tight as to how many laps we have left here, because Verstappen is coming into the final sequence of corners now. It's whether he gets over the line, it's whether we have 1 lap or 2 laps after this one, as Verstappen comes down through 130R now. Keep an eye on the timing screens. It's going to be very, very close here. 10 seconds on the clock as Verstappen gets onto the brakes into the chicane. He comes out and across the line. And does he get across? He does. So it is 2 laps to go at the end of this one. 2 laps to go at the end of this one, which is where Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez are coming to now. So Perez has got 2 more opportunities to try and do it. Is he going to do it?
I think Charles Leclerc will hold on for second place, but it's very, very tight. All it's going to take is 1 mistake.
He's doing a masterful job out there, isn't he?
Oh.
And now the final lap board's
Yeah, the plus
come
1 is
out on the
Formula E.
graphics.
No, okay, so that's interesting. So it's final lap of the Grand Prix. Final lap of the race now for Max Verstappen. He's 25 seconds clear of Charles Leclerc, but with Leclerc's second place finish, he is going to hang on. Verstappen now coming through the middle sector. Charles Leclerc is still holding on to that second place. Perez just can't find a way through at the moment. Alonso has got ahead of Russell. So Alonso, with that strange pit stop, it felt a weird one, but he's managed to get up to where he was before. So he's just had a bit more fun with it, I think. Perez is right behind Leclerc, coming into the hairpin. Does he fancy a... No, he doesn't. I wondered if he'd fancy a lunge. There's going to be contact here. No, they just managed to avoid each other. They're so close together as they come out of the hairpin. Perez fighting with Leclerc over second position. Coming now into Spoon. Perez looks to the inside. Isn't quite able to do it. Now gets on the power. Coming out towards 130R. Leclerc is still holding on to the lead of the Grand Prix. The checkered flag is out, though, for Max Verstappen. Verstappen comes across the line, takes the checkered flag, and wins the Japanese Grand Prix. But it's not going to be enough to seal him the title today. Oh, big lock-up from Leclerc. Has he overcooked it? He has. Leclerc's off. Leclerc's off at the final corner, bounces back onto the circuit, holds the position, gets a big slide. Perez tried to get past him, but Leclerc blocked him, and Leclerc finishes second. Perez third at the line. So close between them. Verstappen wins, Leclerc second, Perez in third place.
I don't think that Charles Leclerc is going to be finishing in second, guys. If you remember Sebastian Vettel, Montreal, a few years ago with Lewis Hamilton, he's gone off, rejoined the track unsafely.
What are you doing, mate? He went off and he pushed me off. He came really unsafe.
Whoa, that's a really, really tight one there for Charles Leclerc to hold on to second position. Third for Sergio Perez, fourth for Esteban Ocon across the line, fifth Lewis Hamilton, sixth Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso seventh, George Russell across the line in eighth. It's going to be ninth place for Nicholas Latifi and 10th for Lando Norris. Weekend breakfast is coming up in just a couple of minutes' time here on 5 Live as the Japanese Grand Prix comes to its conclusion, finally, 3 hours after it started. And Max Verstappen takes the win, but with Leclerc second and only half points scored, and without getting the fastest lap, he does not win the championship. Here's his radio.
Well done, mate. You've won it. You see the checkered flag. Well done.
Nice race at the end, too. Nice few laps in the wet.
Totally dominant. That was absolutely fantastic. Well done.
Yeah, luckily we got the race. The fans deserve that.
And they saw quite an entertaining race, I thought, the fans there. I enjoyed that.
I really enjoyed it as well. We saw some great battles. We saw some interesting strategies. So Yeah, really pleased that the Japanese fans got to see and witness at least a little taste of Formula One action today.
That's like sprint racing, the true definition of, with a little bit of strategy coming in. You can pit if you want to, and some really interesting decisions going on out there. But Verstappen, once again, his 12th win of the season, another Red Bull win. Just incredible form, and to finish so far ahead of everybody else. Well, it's such a short race.
Well, that's what I was just thinking. Technically, we had 28 laps completed, and Verstappen finished 26 seconds ahead, but we actually had way less than that. Leclerc coming back into the pit lane then after that second place finish. That'll be one for discussion and debate. The incident is under investigation, leaving the track and gaining an advantage. I'd be quite surprised if he gets a pen for that, personally. But it is Verstappen who takes the win, Leclerc second, Perez third. The championship fights another day.
It certainly does, by the slimmest of margins. And if there is an incident which sees Perez maybe put up to second and Leclerc demoted to third for that last lap shenanigans, then it would see Max Verstappen needing just 1 point next time out. The championship continues to Austin. Thank you so much for joining us in this very extended Formula One Grand Prix from Japan. We always value your listenership, so to all the production team as well here at IMG, they've done a cracking job. But I think finally, Chris and Selma, we will hand the baton over to you guys.
Well,
Thank
listen,
you.
let me just say, right, what a morning. Selma and I have been in the studio here since, what time is it now? Just after 9 o'clock, so 6:30.
Yeah.
Let me say, guys, your hour or so before we knew whether they would race or not was one of the best examples of filling I have ever known in my 25 years of broadcasting. When it got onto superstars and hair transplants, I was there for it.
We were ready to go, waiting in the wings.
Filibustering will be our new special event if we ever make it to be a member of Parliament. Unlikely.
We loved it. Thank you. Well, finally we got some racing, so thank you very much indeed, guys. Excellent stuff for the hours that we've been with the team there. But we finally got some racing, didn't we, Selma? So that was good
Finally,
news.
the twists and turns, eh?
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. So look, we're going to be with you until 10 o'clock. That's all we've got for you this morning, 50 minutes.